baby, you're live. You better be ready. You aren't really ready. I think I am late. Where the hell am I? Where's my phone? I don't have anything. Okay. Okay. Is it under my bed? Well, good good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning to you. Good morning to you. We're all in our places with bright, shiny faces. This is the way we start our new day. Hi, easily distracted. How are you, my darling? How are you feeling, love? How are you feeling? I don't know where my phone. I guess I don't really need it. Why do I need my phone? Who's gonna call me? Who's gonna call me right now? No one. No one. It's in the kitchen. I know it. Hi, Badger. Oh, you're knitting? How lovely. Oh, gosh, I'm jealous. That's such a wonderful hobby. God, I really want to knit some socks, or you know what I mean? I got one of those a long time ago. I got one of those big, the machines, you know, the big round one, where you can well, I guess it's like a loom, whatever that thing is. I don't know. Anyway, I haven't tried it yet. I mean, I've literally been sitting in my closet for so many years. And because that's the way I am. I try, and then it doesn't always work. Neil, good morning, darling. How are you? 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 Let me move a little more in the middle of my screen. I'll be good in a little while. Oh, baby, Oren from back pain in bed. Oh my God. I mean, I don't know where you are exactly, but if there's anything I can do, like if I can Instacart you something, or literally I'll drive down there, and if you need something, please let me know. That's terrible. That's the worst. It's the absolute worst. Oh yeah, that tastes good. Oh, that was the first sip of coffee. Nom, 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 nom. Well, good morning, my friends. How are you? I hope you're well. Butterflies. Hello, darling. How are you? Yeah, let's see. What is today? Wednesday? Wednesday. Okay. I know. I hope you feel better soon. You have everything you need. All right, bub. Well, just try, just reach out if you do. I mean, I know you've got beautiful support there, but if you ever need extra hands, let me know. And let's see. So, I don't know. I can't really put, here we are again. Okay. So one of the things I really hated, oh, you have crocheting for simpletons. Good till end of scarf. That's why I'm on number 3. Had a girl. Oh my God. I'm useless. I've always wanted to do those things, and I've tried, and then either I'm not like good enough at it, and I get frustrated, or whatever, but I really admire handcrafting and things like that. I think that's so wonderful. So good for you. It's a really topsy-turvy world right now. I think the thing about this, I was listening to, actually, I want to listen to this morning. It's only like a half an hour, but it's a Timothy Snyder interview from a year ago about tyranny. And I listened to it this morning as I was laying in bed, and it's very good. I think I want us to listen to it if you haven't listened to it. And it's, I don't know, this is such an unusual time, I feel like, right? Like this is a very, I feel a little bit in a holding pattern. Does that make sense? I don't know if you guys are sensing that same thing, but I feel like I'm still supposed to kind of hold on to reactions to things. I'm feeling as almost as anxious about my reaction to things as about the things, but not really, because obviously not the same. You know what I mean? Does that make any sense? So, I mean, I'm big on like I want to read the tea leaves and stuff like that. Clearly, we're not in a position to read all the tea leaves, clearly. But I just want to be more. What did Timothy Snyder say this morning? He said, I'm doing a lot of listening. I know, and that's what I guess the anticipation of what is possible is as can be harmful as much, or not as much as, but in addition to the actual impact of whatever they do, this kind of holding pattern to see the crazy. And I'm convinced that the crazy is a distraction from something else. I really am. I'm convinced that this is, like Dr. Oz for Health and Human Services. Like, where is J.D. Vance? I've been asking that since the election. Where is that douchebag? Where? He hasn't been on at anything. He went to the fight and took a picture, but he sure as shit wasn't with them the whole night. So, whatever. Fuck you, JD. You fucking Peter Thiel puppet. But the, good morning from Aberdeen, Washington. Pluto in Aquarius. Full moon. It's good to stay calm and listen right now. Except me, I'm on the move again. Oh, yeah, Val. I think that's still calmness if you're intentionally moving with intention from one spot to another. Love you, Val. Be safe, okay? Be safe on the road, girl. That sounds beautiful, though. Aberdeen, Washington sounds absolutely beautiful. So yeah, I mean, actually, it's really interesting that you say that, Val. I feel like this is the intuition is telling me it's really better to call out what has been said or is happening, right? So that people are informed, but I don't want to alarm, right? And I think that's the really dangerous part right now. Is the difference between awareness and alarm. Hi, how are you? So I think, yeah, I'm kind of like, I'm really trying to listen to really smart people, and I'm really not listening to the, although there are some, like I think I clipped a couple, but I'm actually avoiding people like Tim Pool and D-Day Cobra and Chicks on the Reich and all those people, and Candace Owen and all that. I'm avoiding watching all of that, and Steve Bannon. About time. Well, I was doing it because I can't take it. I deserve that. I know, I just can't handle it. Yay, Val, you subbed to Oomph. Yes, let's push Oomph's musical content. Up, up, up. I want more music. Oh, Morning Joe. What a joke. Morning joke. That's what I'm going to call them. Morning joke. I've always hated those people. I thought for 1 minute that Mika would have something of value to tell us because she wrote that book, Know Your Worth. It turns out it's not. She doesn't know fucking anything. She's like the last person that should be telling people, shit. Choose your words carefully, Sagittarius. Every sentence you speak has the potential to make magic happen as Pluto moves into Aquarius this week, kicking off a nearly 20-year-long period where your communication skills will take on a new level of importance. I don't want to hear Trump's voice. But do you think, oh, good, Lee. Good morning, Lee. Good morning, Max Flower, my darling. How are you? Read Virgo. Uh-oh, Max, you're going to be Zane's extension here on the show. We should invite Zane in to do like a corner, astrology corner every once in a while. They're still Republicans. Yes, never forget, Val. Anyway, so I just can't take the kind of gloaty, we're glad women are going to die, celebrations. I'm not really here for that. So, yes. Finally, you're on go mode, Virgo. Pluto has moved into your sector of productivity for nearly 2 decades. You may notice that your routines and responsibilities are radically going through an overhaul. The patterns you've been in for ages may now require more adjustment. Oh, Virgo, you got work to do. You got some work to do. I'm sorry. I love those. I love the way they're written. Hey, girl. Oh my God. I am so cold. I'm putting sweatpants on over my shorts. That's how cold it is. I didn't find these in the beginning. Anyway, Zane would probably be down. I love Zane. She's got a good. She takes, the thing about it is it's not, and I'm not saying that she takes it seriously. Of course she takes it seriously, but she conveys it in a way that is not like woo, 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 It's like energies and planets and shit. So I really do appreciate what Zane offers in terms of astrology. But I'm telling you right now, that bitch told me I was going to, she promised true love and it never happened. So fuck her. I'm totally kidding. I know whose fault that is. Don't worry. I was hoping for more hibernation. Yeah. No. Nope. Nope. Easily you're front and center now. Oh, Lee, wait, what happened? What did I miss? Send some positive energy out to my friend battling cancer. Listen, Lee, please convey the lounge's love and support for your friend going through cancer. I'm sending some really heavy light her or his way. Sorry, I don't want to gender them, but yeah, sending really positive energy for you, Lee. Wow, that's just so hard. And what is it asshole wants to do? Take a break from researching certain diseases. Yeah, just put it on hold. Great vibes of healing. Oh, thanks for the sub, Val. Oof says. Yeah, I'm really hoping for the best. Lee. Shout out to your friend and lots of strength from this fucking universe. Because you know what? There's plenty of it, so let's use it. Let's see, yesterday, okay, wait. I was watching, there was something I was watching. I was watching something yesterday. Uh-oh, it went out of my head. I guess it wasn't that important. Well, anyway. Thanks. I'm her pseudo caregiver, no family around. Worry about her and the coming fascism. Oh. I know, that's the thing. We really, that's a lesson. There's a lesson from the past. It's really important in times of just stress, and anxiety and whatever, to reach out and just check in with people, especially people who don't seem to have a lot of people around them. I think that would be nice, especially now as we go through weirdness. Do you kind of feel, though, and this is the way I feel, so please correct me, because I think my perspective is really warped. My perspective is from a person who watches right-wing stuff all day long and is an idiot for doing it, but a glutton for punishment, if you will. But I wonder if, oh no, now I forgot. Pseudo caregiver. Okay, it doesn't matter. Trump seems to think his new administration is a reality TV show. Yeah, see, I think I'm convinced now after Sean Duffy from Real World and Dr. Oz that this is all a ruse. None of these names are particularly serious, or if there are some serious names, then they're hidden, amongst the crap. And someone was saying yesterday, one of the pundits, it might have been Popak, I don't know, but one of them were saying yesterday that if he gets, what was it? Oh my God, my brain is really not working today. Okay, I need to take a break. Take a minute. What is Duffy appointed to? Didn't hear that. He is the Department of, what is it? Transportation. He's the transportation. And I thought I heard one more name that was weird. Yeah, it's just a distraction from the real stuff. Speaking of which, there was some. I was watching. Steve Lookner last night because of the crisis in Ukraine and the attackums being sent and anticipating a response. So I was watching Steve last night, um, and oh my God, my brain, I just keep losing my place. I'm not sure what's happening right now. Maybe my brain is freaking out. All right, I'm going to try not to like make any punditry right now because my brain seems to be like short circuiting in for some reason. So I'm not sure why that is. But here we are. All right. Great show. Let's see. So I wanted to the Steve Lookner and the Attackums and what was it? Oh, he was anticipating what Putin was going to do last night. So it was like all this anxiety around, is he going to respond? Is he going to respond? Is he going to respond? I will say Steve has seemed to do a little more learning about the region anyway. He did say Sevastopol, right? So that's kind of that's progress. And actually, I was watching him last night and I thought, he does a lot of the same things. I do a lot of the same things he does because he's done them first. So it's not me doing them first. But I do things a little bit like him in terms of reading stuff. I have help from very smart people to read the right things, but he also attempts to read and bring in sources as he kind of follows an unfolding situation. And I watched him with that lens last night, and I really appreciate. I know that he's a little bit of a little bit hyperbolic. He's a little bit ill-informed about geopolitics. He doesn't know about banking or any of the things that he tries to really report on. But he does try. And so he is a ghoul. I do kind of appreciate that he's at least trying to cover some situations. But he really is, but unfortunately, I can't always like just trust everything he's saying because he's kind of reacting to different stuff coming into him. So I kind of wish it's almost like it'd probably be better for him to pick a lane and really focus on like a top. I don't know. Why should I give him advice? He fucking has a huge show. I just realized how stupid that sounds. Yeah, he enjoys it. I mean, that's the thing. I enjoy what I do too. And I'm definitely not, tight as a drum over here. So clearly I lost my train of thought 3 times already. But I think, oh God, Oz in charge of Medicaid. That's the one. That was the one, Val. That was the one. That was the one. He was too joyous when Biden gave up the nomination and I stopped watching. Yeah. No, he's kind of a goofball. I don't agree with him on a lot of things. And I think his coverage of, bombings is weird and he gets too excited when people are dying. That's it. I just don't I don't think you should get excited when bombs are dropping. I know it's, good for your broadcast, but I don't know. He may not realize he's doing that. You don't run to watch people die. Yeah, that's all. But it was last night, kind of the downside was it was a big anxiety fest, So, I don't know. But anyway, so that was my observation around Steve Lookner. But then I took a picture of him and one of the creative oomph took that picture and ran with it. And so he created these little gems for us. I took a snapshot of Steve last night because it's like he looks so terrible. He looks so sad. And Oomph did this, and this is brilliant. Wait, it gets better. John Fetterman. Ugh. All right, and then the other one is guys, guys. Oh, I like how you changed the tone of his face. I didn't even notice that. Guys. So I really love those and appreciate those. We'll probably use those when there's breaking news. Actually, we'll just leave one up here now. We're just gonna. I love the Doctor Strangelove one. That's like perfect. I'm gonna keep those up there. guys. Yes, thank you, Oomph. The phone did that tone change. Interesting. That's so interesting. We've been invaded by Guais. We're Guayan. United States of Guai. Oh my God. Hi, Kathy. Hi, Carla. Hello, ladies. Hey, ladies. Oh my God. I haven't even smoked any weed yet. Okay, so there's this guy in the States, Neil, called Steve. His name is Steve Lookner, and he does breaking news things on YouTube. Hold on, I'll show you. I don't think he'll be mad if I show 1 minute. And then he does unboxing streams, which is very cute. I watched him build his little in-home studio. He's really kind of amazing, frankly. Okay, so his channel is called Agenda Free TV, and he does like breaking news stuff. Like he's like way into that. Agenda Free, yeah. I'll show you in a second here. I've got it. Meow. 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 Oops. Okay. Oh man. Wait, I gotta move him all up. Okay, so this is his web thing. His YouTube channel. And he Agenda Free TV. And he does like very long streams when there's breaking news. So, and he is particularly fond of, he is useful. Anchor of breaking crowdsourced news. Yeah, there you go. I watched the creepy guy that never talks. Who's that, Badger? But like last night. Steve's cute. But he yells at his chat a lot.
Go in the Washington Post that said, a reason Biden wanted to let Ukraine use these ATACMS on Russian territory is to help them keep hold of their gains in the Kursk region of Russia. Because if Ukraine keeps a hold of that Russian land, they could use it as a bargaining chip in the anticipated possible upcoming negotiations under the Trump administration.
I wish I could show you a part where he loses his shit at the chat, because if the chat tells him to like change a view or go to a different channel or something like that, if his chat tells him anything to do, he yells at them. Hey, guys, I'm trying to do something here. I can't just drop what I'm doing and go to another channel and So I don't think he has an agenda. Well, I think he does have an agenda, because frankly, pretty much everybody has an agenda. It must be Val at Lookner. Yeah. He rents well-positioned cameras and lets them run cold as fuck. Oh, interesting, Badger. I don't even know who that is. So yeah, Steve is not, he's not your go-to for the details or the analysis of what's happening, for sure. And he's not even always the guy to go to for the actual facts, because he does tend to kind of like, I don't know if his media literacy is the most, I don't know, but he's got a big show. He had 109,000 views on this particular episode. He has 500,000 subscribers. So he's doing something right. Whatever. I don't know what it is, but he's doing something right. Anyway, so that's who Steve Lookner is. And there he is right there with Dr. Strangelove. Anyway, so yeah, I was watching him and waiting for Godot, waiting for the Godot bomb, and it didn't happen, which is good because I don't want bombs to drop on anybody. How about that? So yeah, so that's Steve. A conservative has a conniption after Donald picks Dr. Oz to lead Centers of Medicare and Medicaid Service. Ooh. Ooh. Okay, I've got stuff to do. I can't be sitting here like just chitty chatting with you guys. My God, we have things to do. I'm sorry. I really did try to get a bunch of shit. Hold on, let me see. Oh. Buttigieg is testifying this morning. Let's see. What else? What else? What else? What else? Court of Appeals, but they don't tell you what case. Do 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 do. Okay, fine. Let me show you some things that I have. Okay, not that. I mean the other one. Here we go. Do 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 do. Boom. 4 years ago. Oh, I wanted to watch this. Do I? Hold on. Okay, here's our choices. Let me tell you my choices. If you get to even the valley, if you get to like Santa Barbara or something like that, I can drive to you. So you tell me where you're going to end up and I'll figure it out. How about that? I would definitely do that. I will drive to meet you. This morning, my son said, does everyone Trump nominates have to be a pedo? I'm noticing a pattern. I said, yeah, that's how protection rackets work. This is a kind of a big step. He's an independent. That's great, Carla. That's great. It's critical thinking, man. That's critical thinking. There was a story, Oren, that you shared, I believe, yesterday about Politskaya, if I'm not mistaken. Forgive me if I am. I should really try to remember better how people. So I have a few things to read to you today, and I have a couple of things to show you. I think I'll start with reading because then we can go into that. You try. I know. Well, and that's the thing, right? Like, I just don't think that. I guess we're doing this learning thing. I don't know. I'm not really sure. Okay, so I want to read you something. Oh my God, you guys. Yesterday, I don't know if it's real or not, but I think Heather Cox Richardson followed me yesterday, which would make me so happy. I mean, that if it's real, it makes me so happy. Okay, so I have a piece from her that I want to read to you from her Substack, from her Subsnack. Oops, too big. There we go. From her Substack called Letters from an American. This is Heather Cox Richardson I think she teaches at BU or something, Boston University. I'm not sure, but she's a history teacher. And we read her book, Democracy Awakening, when we, back in one of our bedtime stories. So her books is fantastic. She's a fantastic history teacher. She's a specialist on kind of American history and all that. So she wrote this, and I haven't read it. It's from yesterday, but I think I'd like to read it and see if there's anything helpful in it. So get your coffee. And let's see. I'll just do it this way so you can see my face. Okay. Here we go. For 3 hot days, from July 1st to July 3rd, 1863, more than 150,000 soldiers from the armies of the United States of America and the Confederate States of America slashed at each other in the hills and through the fields around Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. When the battered armies limped out of town after the brutal battle, they left scattered behind them more than 7,000 corpses in a town with fewer than 2,500 inhabitants. With the heat of the summer sun beating down, the townspeople had to get the dead soldiers into the ground as quickly as they possibly could, marking the hasty graves with nothing more than pencil on wooden boards. A local lawyer, David Wills, who had huddled in his cellar with his family and their neighbors during the battle, called for the creation of a national cemetery in the town, where the bodies of the United States soldiers who had died in the battle could be interred with dignity. Good morning, Iguana. Love you. Be safe. Officials agreed, and Wills and an organizing committee planned an elaborate dedication ceremony to be held a few weeks after workers began moving remains into the new national cemetery. They invited state governors, members of Congress, and cabinet members to attend. To deliver the keynote address, they asked prominent orator Edward Everett, who wanted to do such extensive research into the battle that they had to move the ceremony to November 19th, a later date than they had first contemplated. And almost as an afterthought, they asked President Abraham Lincoln to make a few appropriate remarks. While they probably thought he would not attend, or that if he came, he would simply mouth a few platitudes and sit down, President Lincoln had something different in mind. On November 19, 1863, about 15,000 people gathered in Gettysburg for the dedication ceremony. A program of music and prayers preceded Everett's 2-hour oration. Then, after another hymn, Lincoln stood up to speak. Packed in the midst of a sea of frock coats, he began in his high-pitched voice, speaking slowly. He delivered a 2-minute speech that redefined the nation. 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal, Lincoln began. While the Southern enslavers who were making war on the United States stood firm on the Constitution's protection of property, including their enslaved black neighbors, Lincoln dated the nation from the Declaration of Independence. The men who wrote the Declaration considered the truths they listed to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But Lincoln had no such confidence. By his time, the idea that all men were created equal was a proposition, and Americans of his day were engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation, or any nation so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. Hi, Paul J. Standing near where so many men had died 4 months before, Lincoln honored those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. He noted that those brave men, living and dead, who struggled here, have consecrated the ground far above our poor power to add or detract. It is for us the living, Lincoln said, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. He urged the men and the women in the audience to take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, and to vow that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that the government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. There he is. There's Lincoln, right there, at Gettysburg. Oh, wait, no, sorry. There he is right there. His head's tilted downward. Forgive me. He's right here. Oh, that's it. Oh, I love that. Thank you, Heather. The other thing I have is something that I think, Oren, I think you sent it to me. Well, I have a few things. I just don't know what to go through first. I'm going to read Jim's piece. I really want to read this piece. QAnon 1. I tried. I want to read this. November 15th. This is from Jim's blog. It reads like a parody of an America Gone Haywire, a ridiculous group of openly anti-American chaos agents, cult members, and oligarchs seize control of the wealthiest and most lethal nation on the planet. Nevertheless, as one example, Tulsi Gabbard, who is a member of an anti-gay sex cult called Science of Identity Foundation, openly spews Russian propaganda and got paid by Peter Thiel to promote Rumble, is set to become the Director of National Intelligence, overseeing all 17 intelligence agencies.
Those of us who are the spiritual children and grandchildren of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, would all be lost orphans were it not for His compassion and mercy.
Yeah, okay. There you go. That's Tulsi. Without the white hair. What happened? To make things potentially far worse, Mike Flynn, the worst traitor in U.S. history, Q himself, wants to be her deputy DNI. There has been no announcement, but regardless, he will have influence. In case you missed it, Flynn is frivolously suing me in Sarasota County. Let's see. Boop. Here we go. Here's the Doom twins. Tulsi is a fucking weirdo. Is that the sex cult or anti-gay sex cult? Anti-gay sex cult. A cult that is anti-gay sex. But maybe it's just a sex cult. I don't know. It could just be, we just want to have sex. I don't know. Oh, bye, Neil. Love you. I'll see you later, babes. Take care. Have a safe day. Be safe. Let's hear what these douche whistles have to say.
And you're going to get it straight. Would you be open to be her deputy or some sort of special assistant, at least for the first year, to make sure that she goes through the wilderness of mirrors?
Yeah, because part of, so the answer is yes, but the part of this too, and this is what I told Vivek, okay, just briefly, that these people in government, they know how to hide, right? And I call them wall walkers because they keep their eyes against the wall because they don't want anybody to actually engage them. So, those are all walking all over the Pentagon, but other buildings in the government. So these people know how to hide, and they know how to come in and give you presentation after presentation. One of the things that they're going to do, and I want everybody to listen closely, for those that have been chosen for these really critical jobs, Tulsi's among them. Pete Hegg says is another. Somebody, whoever goes into the DOJ, the FBI, what they will do is they'll immediately come to you, and they're going to put security all around you, and they're going to say, and they're going to set up a wall to block people from coming to you to give you the truth.
What? Oh, that's what he's saying will happen to Tulsi. Okay, I get it. But not him. The other picks, from Matt Gaetz at DOJ to Chris replacement at FBI, idiotic Russiagate stooge Kash Patel, who is also attempting to sue me for $10 million in Nevada and has his own Q drops, are designed to send a signal that the government will not be there to serve Americans, but will be weaponized to enforce authoritarian rule using any means necessary. What's this? Connected. Oh, this is a Q drop. Kashyap Patel, name to remember. That's a Q drop from June 12th, 2018. Oh, boy. The Great Reset. Oh, how many people are dead in this poster? Let's see. Hold on. How many people are dead? This guy's dead. Dr. Z, he's dead. Who else? Anybody else die? I know there was another one, but he looks like a boiled potato like the rest of them. Anyway, there's another guy in here that's dead. I can't find him right now, but there's another guy in here that's dead too. But this guy's dead. So he's not awakening for anything. Okay? He's dumb. All right, that's Clay Clark's really poorly made poster. Sorry. Here we go. Having a beer with Q right now. Jesus Christ. Pounding the fake news media one lawsuit at a time. Yep, that's him. Mr. Lawfare. Here's the reality. They want you sick. Putin put anti-vax lunatic RFK Jr. at Health and Human Services. They want you stupid. Cut the Department of Education entirely, or put Linda McMahon in charge of it. They want you poor. Put apartheid-born Nazi with $250 billion in charge of austerity. They want you angry. Flood the zone with lies and shut down dissent. They want you terrified. Take away human rights, abuse the rule of law, and threaten violence. This is how you enslave people. You create a different world and force people to live in it. That is, I'm afraid, what our enemies want. All of this made me think back on, well, what a failure this has all been. On 8/2/2020, I started a project to warn about QAnon. A few stats since then. 1,566 days, 20,000 hours, 104,000 tweets, 1 billion views, 133,000 peak followers, 1,560 articles, 15,000 subscribers, about 5 million words, 117 podcast interviews. You get the dose. Oh my goodness. Hundreds of trolls. One documentary, which we watched and we'll watch it again. Before this, I had a 30-year career as a technology entrepreneur building alternate realities through the internet, VR, AR, AI, and numerous other methodologies. I have a Primetime Emmy, 2 Grand Prix Cyber Lions from Cannes, an Innovation Award from the Game Developers Conference, and many other awards. I co-founded 5 companies along the way. I have my faults, but I'm no fool, and I've done the work. Nevertheless, in this entire time, no one in the administration or the media took it seriously or bothered to understand how it was infecting the American population and provoking a national suicide. No one took seriously the reality of psychological warfare or the fact that politics cannot cure a brainwashed cult member. No one believed that psyops are real because psyops work on the media too. No one believed me when I told them a massive crowd of Christian nationalist Proud Boys and QAnon cult members were going to overthrow the Capitol on J6 for Mike Flynn and Roger Stone. No one listened when I said Flynn was reconstituting QAnon in the form of a Christian nationalist movement. When I said over and over we were facing Nazi ideology, I was labeled an alarmist, a doomer, or a conspiracy theorist. I warned that we were missing our chance when the J6 committee focused everything on Trump instead of the people behind him. I have said from day one this is a Russian-backed operation using American traitors to create a death cult. And I explained several years ago that the PayPal mafia, with Elon Musk as the front man and Peter Thiel as the puppet master, were going to use Twitter to psyop us into suicide. And so they did. No one listened, so we're descending into a world of free lies, where reality is completely obscured by oligarchs who want you to look one way while they rob you blind with the other. I happen to be a guy who knows what they are doing because I have done it myself, for fun, for entertainment. But they figured out how to take our ideas and use them as a psychological weapon to hoax people into doing things that benefit themselves, our foreign enemies, and billionaires. I refuse to submit to it, and when they come to arrest me, I will keep writing until they take my iPad away as I live stream it. This is going to be a true war, but every single one of us are already behind enemy lines. We are a QAnon nation now. We are the bad guys. It's time for sabotage and resistance. Long live America. Jim is mad. I love you, Jim. I get it. We've got to resist. We just shouldn't take things for granted. I think there's a lot to be said for that. Now, I wanted to read about this journalist who has really taken on. I'm doing some, now that you brought this up, Oren, I'm looking into this woman, Anna Politkovskaya. And I want to watch the thing. I think you actually recommended this. Is that true? The piece, the video piece on her. Hold on, because I watched it yesterday and I enjoyed it. I think we'll watch it. Hold on, let me see where it is. Oh shit, where is it? Oh, I think that's in the. Okay, hold on. Harper and his Plymouth brethren. Who knew? Yeah, what's happening with Stephen Harper? What's happening? Let me see. Okay, so this, I wanted to...
2020. Hello, everyone,
Oops.
which is made possible.
I've been watching, I watched this. Again, thank you to the recommender. So let me... This is from a number of years ago, okay? This is... Oh, actually, this is 6 months ago. But it talks about... this particular journalist and her history, and I really, I'm ashamed to say that I didn't know her name. So, thank you for sharing that. I'm crossing over. I considered crossing over to Vancouver, but it's too cold up here, heading south and closer to Mexico. Nice. It's cold down here, Val. Really cold. I mean, I'm going to put on a sweatshirt. I already had to put on sweatpants over my shorts. Okay, here we go. This is 23 minutes, so it's a little bit of a long one, but it's really, I was watching it yesterday and it's really interesting. So here we go.
Possible by TV Rain and the Russian Independent Media Archive. Today I would like to start with these 2 quotes.
И это убийство само по себе.
The killing in and of itself brings more harm to both the Russian government and the local government in Chechnya, which she was investigating lately, than her publications.
Гораздо больший урон и ущерб, чем ее публикации.
This was said in 2006, and here's the next quote.
Если бы фигурант, о котором вы говорите,
If the person you're talking about were to be poisoned by the government, it would be quite counterproductive to send them to undergo treatment in Germany.
не так ли?
And this was 2020. 14 years separate these quotes. The first was Putin's response to the murder of Anna Politkovskaya, a journalist who worked for the Novaya Gazeta newspaper. The second was Putin's snarky comment on Alexei Navalny's poisoning. Journalist and human rights activist Anna Politkovskaya was killed in October 7, 2006. After the Second Chechen War in 1999 began, she focused her work completely on Chechnya. The head of Chechnya, Ramzan Kadyrov, openly called her his enemy.
Да, я понимаю смысл вашего вопроса, почему еще как бы ты жива. Если серьезно говорить об этом, я воспринимаю это как чудо. Безусловно, как чудо, что вот пока кто-то еще держит меня на земле.
I will not attempt to tell you Anna's stories in 15-20 minutes. Moreover, many journalists have already done incredible work telling her story, including those with English subtitles. Some began filming while she was still alive, and this footage is priceless. There are films that were made after her death, and there is an investigation by Novaya Gazeta and a film about that investigation. All of this resulted as follows. The murderers were found and imprisoned. However, we don't know who was behind the crime. Anna Politkovskaya was more than a journalist. She became like a one-woman advocacy center, and many Chechens whose life was ruined by two wars would approach her. And her colleagues reminisce on that.
I saw these people that came to her. They were queues sometimes to see her. Chechens and many other people wanted to speak with her.
Bearded men in Caucasian hats made out of sheepskin and women in kerchiefs. All of them would come to our editorial office even before the workday began, and whenever I would leave work late, I still saw some of them sitting there. They're all there to see Politkovskaya, my editor told me.
From the entrance to her office, which was almost at the very end of the corridor, there would be a line of people waiting to talk to her. These people had nowhere to go. They couldn't talk to their government or to the one in Moscow. Politkovskaya was the only one they could talk to.
She wasn't a war correspondent, according to her own statements. She dealt with social problems, including those of refugees. When the Second Chechen War began, thousands of Chechens fled the republic immediately because they already knew what it was like when the federal army came to your doorstep. The federal government that dispatched the army to their homes wasn't overly concerned with their well-being. Everyone that fled bore the trauma of experiencing tragedy, death, ethnic cleansing, violence, and humiliation. To some of them it was traumatic memories, but to others it was traumatic present. And Politkovskaya became the defender of these people.
Ко мне в одном селе подходит женщина моего возраста. Очень строго мне говорит, буквально. Я мать сына, которого замочили в сортире.
The woman told her of how her 14-year-old son was killed. There was a toilet outside, which the federal army decided to demolish with a multiple rocket launcher. I guess they later had to explain that it was some kind of strategic structure, I don't know. I choose this particular story not because of its absurdity, but because of something that was said earlier by none other than the president of Russia. I will leave a list of Politkovskaya articles compiled by Novaya Gazeta in the description, but today I wanted to talk about the meanings of words. Because Politkovskaya's and her colleague Natalia Istemirova's medium was writing. Istemirova had to conceal her real name as she lived in Chechnya, while Politkovskaya's name was well known. If we were to tally up the time she spent in Chechnya, it wouldn't be months. I think it would be years. Because everything she wrote about, she saw with her own eyes. I have to make sure, she would always say. Here is her detailed description of ethnic cleansing, first quoting a 45-year-old woman, Razita, who experienced it, and then quoting the commander of the 45th Regiment that committed the autocracy that Razita had to suffer. He didn't even deny doing it.
And this is the quintessential part. The commander shows us the pits where Chechens are thrown after cleansing. The colonel is thoughtful. He holds me under his elbow so that I don't fall through the mud to a depth of 6 meters. The pit looks exactly as it has been described by the many people who have sat in it. About 3 by 3 meters, a rope runs into the pitch-black underworld. It is supposed to be used to get out for interrogations. Despite the frost, the pit smells peculiar. The rule here is simple. Chechens must ease themselves right under their own feet and keep standing on the same ground around the clock. Or sit, if they want.
And here is her terrifying description of the situation in Vedeno settlement. Vedeno was hated especially by the federal forces as it was the birthplace of Shamil Basayev. It appears that the federal army considered all the residents terrorists by association.
When you have nothing, you become capable of committing irrational acts. Here, for example, you know that you can't go into the forest, even though it is the only savior of the local people. Neither for firewood nor for Ramson, a source of vitamins. However, people still go. They have no other choice, even knowing that in the village cemetery lie those who also decided to go for firewood and were simply shot on the spot. The game of roulette called firewood procurement is constant and merciless.
She's meticulously describing this lifestyle where at any given moment you could be killed or raped. Any given moment can bring torture or humiliation. And all of that has been confirmed to be true. I'm quoting singular articles right now, but she wrote about 750 articles in total about these events for Novaya Gazeta alone. She also wrote books, chronicles of the Second Chechen War. She portrayed from all sides. She interviewed civilians, fighters, federals, separatists, etc. She gave war itself the megaphone. This was economist Alexander Auzan who wrote after her death.
Today, there are almost no journalists in Russia who don't go off of a known fact, but instead find out about a little-known event and turn it into breaking news. Politkovskaya was doing just that.
Her words were real. It is vital to understand that when someone spends so much time in Chechnya and dedicates their life to it, the people know it and they are grateful. Chechnya knew who Politkovskaya was.
Когда ты на Кавказе, самое главное связи, они так просто не устанавливаются. Они ни денег не стоят, ничего. Это только личный контакт с человеком, твое личное доверие. У меня эти были контакты, они появились, да, люди ко мне были расположены.
Аня Политковская вместе с Наташей.
Anna Politkovskaya, along with Natalia Estimirova, would wear kerchiefs of Caucasian women, cross war-torn roads with them, and cross the entirety of Chechnya. They would rest at people's houses, and it was interesting because afterwards, the inhabitants of these houses would boast that Anna Politkovskaya spent the night at their house.
These connections and this gratitude went a long way. In 2002, as you remember from previous episode, there was a hostage crisis in Moscow at the Dubrovka Theater Center. Politkovskaya was one of the negotiators who was allowed to bring water to the hostages. She would also deliver the captors' demands to the authorities, but they wouldn't listen to her. However, after the Nordost tragedy, Politkovskaya and her colleagues at Novaya Gazeta conducted an investigation which proved that one of the organizers of this terror attack was the employee of Russian secret services.
У меня, конечно, в силу того, что я давно работаю на Второй Чеченской войне, во всех слоях чеченского общества есть также люди, с которыми могу советоваться.
И готовы поделиться информацией.
Безусловно.
Can you hear the background voice? It's none other than Vladimir Solovyov, once a respected journalist and now Kremlin's top propagandist. By the way, the investigation was published. Her words had real power. More power than most words spoken by politicians at the time. That led to death threats and attempts on her life. And she was poisoned when she flew to Beslan, a town which suffered a hostage crisis at the local school number 1. Politkovskaya barely made it out alive. Journalists that would interview her all opened with the same basic question: was she afraid for her life? And she responded that she was a normal person, that of course she was afraid, but she looked like she wasn't afraid of anything. Neither the terrorists, nor Kadyrov, nor the generals or of the Federal Army. Here is an exemplary conversation aired on NTV when she argued with General Vladimir Shamanov, who was also the governor of the Ulyanovsk region at the time.
Сидит Анна Политковская, да, это на совести ее, значит, те слова, которые были мне приписаны, значит, в «Новой газете». Поэтому Политковская там все, значит, выдернула из текста, интерпретировала, и потом начала гулять это по всей нашей прессе. Дайте ей слово, пусть она скажет.
Пожалуйста. Мое слово будет очень короткое. Владимир Анатольевич, я никогда не думала, что вы можете так просто неприлично лгать.
Что вы говорите?
Да, я просто никогда не могла предполагать этого. Извините, ради бога, вы же русский генерал, как вы сейчас сказали.
Безусловно.
Значит, могу сказать, что эта кассета сохранилась. Возможно,
знаете,
когда вы губернатор,
меч.
у вас слишком много дел, чтобы помнить такие детали, но я всего лишь журналист и помню прекрасно. Весь...
Да. Вы всего лишь журналист, который объективно описывает события у десантников и так далее и тому подобное.
Именно так.
Да.
Еще раз вам должна
Вашу объективность
напомнить.
мы прекрасно знаем.
Кто вы? Мы Николай II, Владимир Анатольевич.
Люди
Хотела бы вам напомнить
Люди
трагедию Новых Алдов, 5 февраля 2000
Абсолютно
года.
выдуманная вами история.
What was this all about? Her words against his. Very few people in the audience, as well as in the TV audience, had been to Chechnya. I doubt that anyone there witnessed the tragedy of Novye Aldy. It was a mass murder of 60 civilians by the Federal Army. No one witnessed the gruesome abduction and murder of Elza Kungaeva by Colonel of the Federal Army Yuri Budanov. Here is another quote from the same program. Politkovskaya was technically an audience member, and Dmitry Muratov, editor-in-chief of Novaya Gazeta, was Shamanov's opponent.
Меня просто удивляют слова главного редактора: при помощи града, танка, значит, навести порядок. Никто таких алгоритмов не ставил и так не делалось.
Град не употреблялся в Чечне.
Град употреблялся в Чеченской Республике абсолютно вне населенных пунктов и только по скоплению бандформирований.
А Грозный чем снесли? Пистолетами?
Значит, Грозный сносили при помощи нанесения разведанных авиационных ударов и ударов высокоточным оружием.
А что ж там разведывали? Весь город разведали?
Значит, там, где проявлялись бандформирования, туда наносились удары.
А мирное население?
Мирное население не уничтожалось.
Не уничтожалось?
Да.
Понятно.
The general's problem was that everything he was saying could have been debunked because Politkovskaya recorded their conversations and kept the tapes safe. Here is an important detail for context. Politkovskaya was active at the time when the main newspaper in the country was Kommersant, and government officials didn't tend to read Novaya Gazeta, whereas Kommersant was their morning read. Something that needs to be understood about Kommersant is that their priority was always gripping yet witty headlines. Remember from our Beslan episode, the one from that went, Putin couldn't care less about the constitution because he cares so much. And then in 2022, there was another one. A real bucha was raised about an opposition politician when Ilya Yashin was arrested for his video about the Bucha massacre. The word bucha in Russian also has the meaning of a load of trouble. Or another one that went as obvious as 2 + 2 is 22 when journalist Ivan Safronov received a 22-year prison sentence on fabricated charges of treason. This approach basically defends the stance that journalists are nothing but cameras, microphones, and notebooks, people that shouldn't have an opinion on the matters they cover, however they can.
I really wanted you to see the part where she exchanges with the Russian general and things like that. I will link the rest of this, but she is definitely someone I want to read more of what she wrote back in the day. Ethics Day. What's ethics? What's Ethics Day? Whose ethics? What? Whose ethics are those? What? Wait, hold on. And I also have a page of information on her, on Politkovskaya. So I will do that as well. Maddie Fine Day. Oh, really? Is something being released? I better check the news. Oh, ethics panel expected to meet today as it considers whether to release its final report on Gates. That's right. Meanwhile, the House Ethics Committee is expected to meet today as the panel considers whether to release its final report on Gates related to allegations of sexual misconduct. Well, oop. It's going to be bad. I hope they do. Come on, somebody just leak it. Okay, the ladies who were the victims in this are okay with leaking it. So I say let's do it. Let's be bold. Why not? Let's see. That's that. Oh, what's this? Oh no, that's fine. I think that is. Oh wait, where's the other?
Hannah's been on the front line since the day she arrived in Parliament.
I wanted to watch this too because we were talking about the Maori MP, who of course is getting a lot of attention for her the viral video of her in Parliament in New Zealand. And so I'm interested in finding out more about her. And so I found this little piece it's only a minute, so it won't be a big deal. It puts a new meaning on Hump Day Wednesday. Yeah, it does. Okay, so let's meet, because the Maori are really rising up for their rights through a treaty that was established that is apparently not being adhered to. And so the Maori in New Zealand are making their voices heard, which is wonderful to see. And I'm just curious. I'm interested in what's happening in that part of the world. It's right there in House Ethics Rule. Don't get caught. Well, technically he didn't. Okay. All right. So this is a little piece. Here we go.
Hannah's been on the front line since the day she arrived in Parliament. And she's fearful the next battle over the treaty will be the worst.
Treaty Principles Bill is a whole nother game. Honestly, it's gonna cause riots.
The Treaty of Waitangi means Māori hold a special status. It has been used to forge land rights, cultural preservation, and address historical grievances. But just as those who back the bill have plans for the future, so too do Māori.
Okay, with everything going, why are they consistently dictating over us when that's not what the treaty says? That is not what our founding document says. It says, you look after your people, we'll look after our people, and we can get along. It does not say you govern over us. And that's the bigger questions that we're starting to ask ourselves now. Why do we beat to their drum?
Yeah, so I'm very curious. I want to be aware of what's happening down in New Zealand and in other parts of the world. Then the G20's happening. We got the big old G20, GTO, G2O. Yes, it does sound like he got caught. Let me just see. Is this? I want to see what this one is about.
To the water that was
no,
next
we're not
to
doing
where they
this.
were parked.
Raped and murdered children. We're not going to do that. Nope. Sorry, not doing it. Let's see. Is there anything else happening? We kind of blew through a lot of the stuff that I wanted to go through. That's the UK. That's Pennsylvania Supreme Court. This looks interesting. It's tribal leaders testify on missing. Oh, I didn't realize. I thought it was border stuff again. On Indigenous women. Okay, well.
like the Feather Alert at the federal level that holds accountability, also creates training and opportunity for law enforcement, and it also creates more awareness from law enforcement and surrounding communities of this. Because I don't want our loved ones to keep having to carry each other to the water to wash away the trauma that they're experiencing. My family, the Echohawk family, has for many years, since the inception of the United States government, has served in our armed forces. Our Native people, it is one of our proudest achievements, is our serving in the armed forces. At this point in time, we represent a little over 1% of all of those in the active armed services. And our communities have dedicated ourselves to service to this country. However, we do know that those in the military often suffer as a direct result of this crisis, and it's something we have not talked about, nor has it been addressed by any of the legislation that has been passed, nor any of the efforts that we are aware of at the state level, except for now in the state of Hawaii and the state of Alaska.
I feel like
We know that our active duty service members who are American
vulnerable
Indian Alaska
people
Native
in
suffer high rates
Congress
of sexual assault, domestic violence.
that are
However, finding
holding
that
us
data
back.
on what actually is happening is very, very difficult. And then when we look at the crisis of those active duty service members who are not serving in the way like my Uncle Brummett did. My Uncle Brummett was a Pawnee code talker. He was a man who was dedicated to service to his community that instilled into us what it meant to serve in the armed forces. There are members in our armed forces who are not serving in the way that my Uncle Brummett did, that many of your constituents do. And instead, we see them victimizing those tribal communities and indigenous communities around them. My organization is currently funding the work in the state of Hawaii.
I didn't know it
to look
wasn't
at the
visual.
impact of
Oh, I'm
missing and
such an
murdered
idiot.
Indigenous
I'm
women
so
and girls on
sorry.
Native Hawaiians.
God.
In their very first report, they found in one
Wow.
particular sting operation that of those who were online soliciting sex from an identified 13-year-old girl, 38% of those who were arrested as a result of that sting were active duty military. This is a crisis that we have to address, and it's one that's important to me. I was a young girl who was affected by this violence. I experienced sexual assault at the first age of 6. I attempted suicide at the very first time when I was 9 years old. The Creator must have had a plan for me because I don't know how I lived. As a result of that trauma, the way that I acted as a teenager was not always the way we would want our loved ones to do. In February, I sat in a room with other people in Alaska, and we talked about in that room about the active trafficking of young girls like me through the military bases in Alaska. And the reason I was part of that conversation is because I had been part of being victimized. And I remember being 16 years old, looking up on the wall of a barrack that I shouldn't have been in, and seeing my name written down along with other women that I knew, other girls. And I realized it was a list that this military man that I was with was making of the girls that he was victimizing, including myself, and he had written our names on the wall. I can see that in my head right now in a picture. My name and other names. We have to address what is going on in the Department of Defense, and we need to know. And right now, we don't know the baseline of what is happening. So what I am asking for is that we ask the military, and there's opportunity within the National Defense Authorization Act, for them to compile a report of currently available data on human trafficking, sexual assault, domestic violence, and also homicide of both active duty military who are affected by this and those who are perpetrators in the active duty military.
That sounds like a very panicky Marjorie Taylor Greene addressing the chat comments. It sounds very like she's panicking.
Of those active duty service members who deserve safety too. I carry their stories with them. I was with the women in Hawaii who are doing this work recently, and she handed me her baby who was about 4 months old, and I was holding him on my chest. And I thought about that elder who said she carried me in prayer. And I thought about the woman who washed her sister off in that stream by the river as they were being trafficked. And I thought about this young baby who I could feel his breath on my cheek, his hand reaching up to pull my hair, just like I'm sure many of you have held your babies and your grandchildren. And I thought, this cannot be the outcome for this young child. Our opportunity is now. The accountability is now. And 4 years from now, I don't want to be sitting in the same chair 8 years after the signing of Savannah's Act and Not Invisible Act, screaming into nothingness that urban Indians are still not included. Please ensure that there is accountability for urban Indian populations as we move forward in doing everything we can to achieve justice. Thank you.
Thank you, Abigail. Cheryl?
Good morning, everybody. I'd also like to repeat what she said in thanking you for bringing us to the table. I'm just in the same as her. Let me start over. Hello, my name is Cheryl Horn, Naju Magaju. Standing in the Rain is my name. I was named by my grandfather, Gilbert Horn, Sr., who also came to Washington on many visits and advocated for our people. And he was a code talker, so I just want you to know that my name came from when he was standing in the Himalayan mountains and it rained for 30 days. So I try to stand tall and take what I can, you know. So I'm a grassroots advocate who came to MMIP as a family member of 2 missing girls, Tristan Gray and Selena Not Afraid. My nieces were both found deceased, so I choose to speak up at any table I can. With Selena, she was missing for 20 days, and she was last left a rest stop, and the authorities left the rest stop, but us as a family, we didn't leave. We stayed there, we camped there, we slept there. We were the search party. While the county sat across the road at the other closed rest area, the state of Montana turned the power on for us at this closed rest area. And we were watched by the county. And we had to fight for investigation. We had to fight for everything. And then on day 8, Operation Lady Justice showed up. And when he showed up, he told me they showed up because I wouldn't be quiet. So day 8, he showed up, and I thought, okay, we're going to leave. Well, no, it includes a profile first. They'll profile your child. So they didn't look on day 8. We had to stay till day 13. When Operation Lady Justice brought the search team, the official search team, and we were able to pack up, go back into the urban city of Billings, and resume our search efforts there. At the same time, having people watch the rest area for us, you know, just to verify that something is happening. So my niece was found on day 20 on a grid search. I believe she was found on day 19, and we found out day 20. But the grid search from Operation Lady Justice brought her home. But when I was standing there with my sister, looking out into a dark field, with my uncle, a Marine veteran who was 60-something years old, protecting us, that's all we had. And my boyfriend, a 60-year-old Marine vet, in the middle of nowhere. So when I stood there and I looked out there and I told my sister, do you think she's here? And she said, no. I said, I don't either. But when we get her back, because we're going to get her back, we're not going to quit till we get her back, one way or the other. When I get her back, I won't stop, because when she moves, there's another girl standing behind her. And how can I turn and walk away after I've done that work to get my niece and made noise? So from there, you know, I just became a grassroots advocate, working on zero budget, having people call me because I went through it. So here I am trying to heal and trying to deal with my stuff, but at the same time we were at the rest area, I was in Billings helping a sex traffic victim get back to South Dakota at 3 o'clock in the morning. I was providing her food, clothes, water, and security. And in that little time, she went from Seattle to me. There was a black man already trying to get her to Alabama in that short a time. So from Billings to Rapid City, here we were crossing our fingers, praying that she got off in Rapid City. And she did. I had to kind of tell him some untruth about me. He's like, are you a Fed? And I was there in my pajamas, and I said, yes. And every stop you go, there's going to be one just like me. So, you know, there's things you have to do as families to get the ball rolling and to get somebody to hear you. And I believe our biggest barrier is the lack of proper investigation and prosecution. I come from a tribal level, but I've been on county and state issues too. So On a tribal level, I'm on the Montana Task Force, and we recently had a search and rescue training. And this is just an example of what we have to deal with at home. I had a hard time getting law enforcement to come to our training, free training. And we had a missing person at the time. So they sent their drug dog officer. We went through all the training, and when he was done, I tried to talk to him about plans I had for our community. And he looked at me and said, I'm too busy. I probably won't even be doing this. After he wasted his time, everybody's time coming to that. So that's what we deal with on a tribal level. You know, my MMIP budget is 0, yet I help people. I advocate for a lady that lives in Richmond, Virginia. Her daughter was killed in a domestic violence situation in Montana. I'm her advocate. She's not a Native American. I advocate for everybody. I don't ask you where you come from, what color you are, anything. You call me, I help you. I try to find resources. That's all I can do. I can't give resources because unless I have money in my pocket from my paycheck. You know, I don't have resources. I do come from a tribe that supports my efforts. And if I do come with a serious enough issue, I do get the support from my chairman, you know. But unfortunately, tribal programs, they're not a resource for us. I can't go to a tribal program for a girl right now it's the treatment programs. They're taking them off to California, Oklahoma, everywhere for treatment, getting them hooked up in their system with Medicaid, and then kicking them out. So when you're out, okay, all of a sudden you're missing again, right? Your family doesn't know where you are in another state. I have no resources to get her home. I have to beg on my Facebook page for people to donate to get she's probably not even coming to my reservation. She's probably coming somewhere else, but we want to get her home. We have formed a network where was none. When my nieces went missing, I stood on Billings rims and hollered because nobody heard me with my first niece. Nobody heard me when I looked for Tristan. And you know what? We found her. We found her killer because we made the cops look at the airport evidence. And he got out after he ran over my niece. He looked at her, and he got back in his vehicle, and he left. And 3 years later, when they closed his case, the county attorney in Billings, Montana, looked at me and said, he feared for his life when he hit her. So he's free. We're not pressing any charges on him because he feared for his life when he ran over my niece. So that's a concept that now is catching on in Montana. We have other people now who've got hit, but they feared for their life, so they get out of things. This fearing for your life is an excuse, and the only person who should be fearing for their life is the victims. So I guess I have not heard much on the Not Invisible Act since it came into effect. When it comes to Operation Lady Justice, Selena was the only case I can ever say that had any effect. I've never had anybody reach out to me on all the states and all the advocates I have to say that they were affected. And because I made such a noise, my niece was helped, and that's not right. Because not everybody is brave to stand up. Not everybody's brave to sit in front of you. But when there are people are missing, they have to turn to somebody. So I guess in closing, I want to thank you for sharing this space to me. You know, there's a lot of families that are working on healing, and myself as a family, as advocate, I had to step back. And you know what? I tried to step back, and I couldn't. I had to take some mental health to myself heal from my niece. So, you know, but the whole time I was doing it, I felt guilt because I knew people weren't reaching out to me. I knew they didn't know what to do. So I want to tell you, on the plane ride here, I stopped in Minnesota and I turned my phone on. I had a message from a young girl in my community. She had recently been held by gunpoint by her boyfriend and beat up, and she has not heard from anybody. She does not know where it is. She is scared to come back to our reservation. You know, we don't have any follow-up as victims. We don't have a recourse. We sit and wait for nothing. We sit and wait for no updates. So this young girl, I can't help her today, but when I go home, I will do my best to help her, which means asking the officers where the investigation is, just seeing where her case is and getting her some answers back. And very seldomly do we address the mental health of this. So as an advocate, I went through it. So my purpose now, my main purpose is I try to heal people. I not personally heal, I'm not a healer, but I try to find resources and I work towards healing with them, and I encourage them very much to heal and not be angry, because if we have anger, we're not getting anywhere. We're not going to get anything done. And this is, I've heard it before, it's non-party. We're humans. And I'm not here just for every Native American girl. I'm here for everybody who has been through this injustice of murder.
Sorry. So sorry.
Domestic violence, killings. So
Thank you so much.
I have a few names. If you can remember one and Google one.
Yes, Matt Whitaker.
My job has been done today, because my point is that these people
Ambassador
are
to NATO.
K. Sarah, K. Bonnie, Casey, Freeman, Leon, Thomasine, Preston, Claiborne, Selena, Tristan, Ashley, Cole, Willie. These are names I sat and wrote as I sit here. These aren't everybody I advocate. These are just the names that popped in my cloudy head right now, to remind myself this is why I'm here. And Shakaya Blue Harding is still missing. That's another thing. As her and her mom and another victim of her perpetrator, we tracked him down. We went on social media and found him when the Billings police told us they couldn't find him.
Hello, Carrie.
We couldn't get him to speak up for Shakaya, but we got his DNA. We got them to test his DNA, and he popped hot on some rape kits. Some backed up rape kits in the state of Montana. So he is in jail on rape, but he will not tell us where Shakaya Blue Harding is. And he was the last person with her. He was her boyfriend at the time, and she was hiding from him at the time. So all we can do is continue to talk about Shakaya, and if she's somewhere, let her know we won't give up on her. And I just want to thank you again, everybody, because from the very beginning, this is where I pictured myself. I tried to manifest this to come to Washington, D.C. So when I finally got it, I was really shocked. So kind of stutter too. I'm, starstruck. So, but this is something that when I was screaming out into a field in the middle of the night, telling her that everybody who cares is here, and it's just our family. So the data and all that, I'm all for data, but I'm all for the resources that need to trickle down to the actual mental health of families, the resources of families going to look for their kids. Luckily, we have some nonprofits that have been formed to do this, but even they're moving away from it. So thank you for letting us come to the table and keeping our ball rolling, because this is a crisis. It's not a issue, it's a crisis. And it's a crisis all across the United States, and it's not just Indian country. It is everybody. Everybody gets injustice, and everybody deserves justice. So thank you again for allowing me.
Thank you, Cheryl. Mary Jane.
Tatsmewi, Enum West, Tamaya Tolwin, my good morning. I am Mary Jane Miles. I am an elected representative serving on the Nez Perce Tribal Executive Committee. I'm also an ordained Presbyterian minister in the Presbyterian Church USA. The Nimipu, the Nez Perce people, want to thank this committee and the administration for their efforts again to understand the needs of Indian country, and for the hand of friendship to hear my thoughts on an issue very important to me and to many others. Missing and murdered Indigenous people was first introduced to me as a policy issue during my visit to Vancouver, BC. I heard how the First Nations were lamenting the murder of women in that day that were not being investigated, and the invisibility of Native women in the crimes against them. I then began to understand that there were unsolved murder and missing Indigenous persons in the United States, and that this is not an isolated problem. Sometimes I feel that the Native Americans are so few that we are very easy to forget. As you can see, I am an older Native American woman who knows of the turbulence in a relationship, as I myself am a domestic violence survivor. During the time I endured that relationship, I wondered why and how our tribal people came to this dark time with fractured relationships with no accountability. I believe that diseases like drug and alcohol abuse play a big part in the overall problem, but also the poverty on the reservations as well. My inner being agonizes over the lack of worth given to Native women and the senseless acts that lead to their harm. In the past, people in power have not cared about Native women, but their families and their tribes do. One instance that touches my heart is the loss of a young woman I counseled who was strangled by her partner. I had also counseled the perpetrator beforehand, and I just happened to be a friend to his father. I conducted the funerals of both the young woman after the crime and the perpetrator's dad, who died shortly thereafter. This was an awful time of unrest and sadness that tore our community apart. Women continue to be the backbone of our tribal communities. I like the way we handle life, the way we handle difficult situations. Men need to be a part of that solution to this very real problem on the reservation. As our tribes grow and change alongside the communities around us, some of the traditional roles of the men have been taken away from them. Native men have historically been providers, but with the advent of reservation life, this role was taken away from them. So we need to get to work combating the root of the problem, which include gaps in law enforcement and the lack of communication between jurisdictions. We need to work on establishing and funding recovery centers, extended family support programs, and fully supporting tribal law enforcement and detention centers. We will use some of the funding to assist with training our police force and to assist with investigations. Another proposed program is designed to help persons who are vulnerable to becoming victims of human trafficking by providing backpacks that contain personal safety alarms and a flashlight, as well as other safety items. And we are also strengthening our data collection for vulnerable persons by creating a database with information that can be provided to law enforcement if a person goes missing. We are also working to coordinate information sharing with other regional tribes to lessen the time it takes for us to know when a person has gone missing on a sister reservation. In closing, I would like to say that I am encouraged that there are movements to highlight this issue and hearings like today to help recognize and address the wrongs to the Native women and men and help prevent them in the future. I am tired of crying out loud on this issue, and I don't want to do that anymore. I want to experience progress, and I want to thank you again for your time.
Hello, SB.
Thank you, Mary Jane. Marlon?
Good. All right, great. Whew. Chairman Simpson, Ranking Member Pingree, and honorable members of this committee, I so appreciate you holding this hearing and giving us space today. I have served as a tribal ambassador for my tribe, the Penobscot Nation, for over 7 years. I will soon advocate for all of the Wabanaki tribes in Maine as the incoming executive director for the Wabanaki Alliance. Ndiliwizi, Malian Bryant, Naganujaya, Bonawapskeg. My name is Malian Bryant. I am from the Penobscot Nation, and these warrior women here today have given me the courage to say that I'm also a domestic violence victim. A man once looked me in the eye and said, I could kill you right here and nobody would ever know. He was right, and I'm so lucky he didn't. I'm a mother to 3 daughters. Iris is 2, Layla is 15, and Carmela just turned 18. Their safety and well-being has driven much of my work and advocacy on the issue of missing and murdered Indigenous women and people. 1 in 3 Indigenous women will be the victim of a violent crime in her lifetime, and there are 4 of us in my immediate family. The societal component of this crisis and why it has been so hard to combat and address cannot be overlooked. When I was young and watched the Walt Disney movie Peter Pan, it was the first time I can recall seeing stereotypes about my people. The Indian encampment scene and the use of stereotypes around tribal women are a sad example of this. Tiger Lily, the Indian princess. She's a child, but made to look exotic and tempting. The older women in the camp are brash and mean and called racial slurs. Even the Disney version of Pocahontas, which tells a story meant to portray progress and honor, gets it wrong. Pocahontas was likely 14 when she met the English soldiers. She was taken to Europe, where she died of disease away from her family, culture, and homelands. These stereotypes have broadly applicable implications and unfortunately have been propagated throughout our society. A lot of our experience as real Indigenous women has been minimized and at times silenced altogether while Americans embrace these false creations of us instead of seeing us as real people. It makes us objects and it makes us less than human. And candy coating our history and reality doesn't help anything. It makes us more invisible. When an Indigenous woman goes missing, there is not the same attention and action as when a Caucasian woman does. The primary reasons for this are threefold: societal indifference, jurisdictional and coordination issues, and a lack of resources for tribal law enforcement agencies. The false conceptions of our people often lead to victim blaming and attitudes that minimize attention given to these cases. If an Indigenous woman goes missing from a bar or a boyfriend's home, or if she has addiction or family issues, she is often seen as putting herself in harm's way, and she is often seen as the problem. It is a fact that a lot of quote-unquote negative behaviors and dysfunction are a lasting consequence of the horrors inflicted on our people in the colonization of this country, be it the theft of land, the pandemics, the residential school policy and the theft of our children, the outlawing of our religion. We are real people deserving of equal rights and treatment, and we are healing from so much. Jurisdictional issues are equally harmful. There needs to be clear duties and processes delineated before, during, and after these crimes occur. Until recently, the Wabanaki people in Maine lacked equal access to the tribal provisions of the Violence Against Women Act due to our outdated and oppressive 1980 Maine Indian Land Claims Settlement Act. Fortunately, after years of work and lots of support from Ranking Member Pingree, we were able to address this, and now VAWA cases within the Penobscot Nation's jurisdiction are being fully handled by our tribe. Ensuring that Indigenous people report the crimes and feel safe and supported doing so is important because due to a lack of justice, which you have heard all about, victims can feel like it's not worth the time or effort in an already traumatic situation to take the needed steps. Our own tribal law enforcement agencies need additional support. While tribal law enforcement funding has increased in recent years, the increases are far from meeting the actual level of need. One of the largest barriers is actually the growth of unrelated line items connected with contract support costs and 105L leases, which are taking up a larger and larger portion of Congress's allocation towards our budgets. It is critical that these be moved to the mandatory side of the budget so that funding increases go towards real program improvements and services rather than fulfilling mandatory contract obligations. Funding the key programs for our people in the federal budget and upholding the trust responsibility helps keep our communities safe. It helps us in terms of health, stewardship of natural resources, public safety, and keeping our communal and cultural connections strong. All of the appropriations decisions you all make in this room impact this crisis because in order for our people to protect each other and heal from past trauma, we need to have resources and means to survive. Thank you so much for the invitation to come here today. I am deeply, deeply honored to be on this panel with these amazing women putting in such hard, heartbreaking work. Kachiwaliwini, thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank all of you for being here. And we'll go to members' questions here in just a minute, but I want to tell you, I don't know if you know this, Mary Jane, but I've been on this committee for 22 years. So I've been dealing with funding for Indian country for a number of years. Learned an awful lot from my chairman here. So I'm involved. I listen to the news all the time. I knew nothing about this issue until about a year ago. I was watching Idaho Reports, and I believe it was you that was on the program talking about murdered and missing Indigenous women. And I'm sitting there and I'm stunned. And then I'm pissed off, or PO'd. After that, and said, we've got to do something about this. We've got to do better. But I think all five of you have demonstrated this picture up here. When I first became chairman of this committee the first time, I asked the Shoshone-Bannock tribe to give me something to hang on the wall. And they had one of their artists paint this, and they explained to me, this is an attempt to demonstrate, and I think in the narrative there it says,
I guess we're not going to be able to see the picture.
Native American women. I think you all just demonstrated it. Mr. Cole.
Yes, there it is. That
Thank
is
you
beautiful.
very much. I look at that picture and I think, well, that's typical. You get the federal government something, you never get it back. You know. First, I want to join the chairman. Thank you for your testimony. That's difficult testimony. I know it's very difficult for you personally to talk about some of these experiences, but it's important. It's important for people to understand the reality. We can talk numbers and jurisdiction and statistics. There's nothing as powerful as a personal story to drive home a point. And so thank all of you for doing that.
That's not Katie Britt, is it?
That I would ask you, and I'll just start, if I could, you and move across. And if it's something you don't care to comment about, that's fine too.
Yeah.
I'm very interested in your perspective. If you had to identify, and you did a little bit of this, a couple of you in your testimony, what is the greatest needs that tribes are facing, and what exactly should Congress do about it to specifically deal with this problem? And I'll start, if I can, with you, Eugenia.
Thank you for that question, Chairman Cole, and thank you for being a supporter of Indian country and for the work that you do. I do want to state that we have a booklet that we passed out. I know that there are some who believe that data is not really important. We just recently started collecting our data, and we have that all within our booklet. And so if you turn to page 16, there's actually a picture of all of the people in our tribe who have gone missing or who are missing. Again, we don't have actual pictures of those who are murdered, but we do have the information within the booklet for those who have gone missing. We also have, there it is. We also have information on there about the criminal cases that have been declined by the U.S. Department of Justice. I think to answer your question, it's easy to say that money is going to solve everything, but in reality, it's not. We get money to help assist with some of the issues. However, there's so much red tape involved red tape at the federal level that make it almost impossible for us to spend money the way that we see fit. And I say that specifically because we are a 638 contract tribe, so we do receive 638 funding. However, there's so much limitations on those fundings that make it hard for us to be able to look at the issue that's in front of us and say we're going to use these funds towards this issue. So again, I think it's easy for us to say that money is going to solve it, but I don't think it is. What I would like to ask of this committee and for the new incoming members,
Is that guy next to her, Lutabaka?
Of Congress, is to say that
I know him.
Understanding is very important.
Kind of looks like
knowing who we are as a people is very important. Knowing that there are 575 tribes, separate tribes that are different from each other, that have different issues, that are treated differently, I think is really the first step in understanding. Just as you stated, Chairman Simpson, you didn't really know about the issues until just up a year ago. There's many issues within Indian country that we face that all contribute to what's happening with missing, murdered Indigenous women. And so I think I would have to say it's just that understanding and that education that everybody should have that responsibility I'm taking on, especially if you're going to be
That's
representing
Lutabaka. He was the ambassador to the State Department or something. Basically, he was our contact for funding for anti-slavery programs. He is fan-fucking-tastic. I love Lutabaka so much.
Ethnicity at every part of the country, but when it's this staggeringly out of scale compared to other groups, and it's horrible, no matter who.
I guess, no, he ran the Trafficking in Persons office at the State Department.
It was the thing that caught my
but he was an
eye.
ambassador or something.
You actually had some of these statistics.
Maybe he was, but anyway, nice guy. Oh my God. And so fucking on it when it comes to trafficking.
We clearly have
He fought so hard for the Trafficking in Persons funding every fucking year. I really like Lou. I think he's a good soul.
Law enforcement enough on their own lands with their own people. That's just my personal opinion.
And he looks
we
great.
have enormous resources.
If it's him.
There is a differential here. It's not the same for everybody. So anyway, thank you for your work. Abigail, if your thoughts on what we should do. If Congress could do 2 or 3 things, where would you focus the effort?
So treaty and trust responsibility does not end because we stepped off of tribal land. And so a recognition, again, that enrolled members of federally recognized tribes, state recognized tribes, there is the necessity to ensure that our safety is a priority regardless. And those statistics, which some have been talked about here, from my 2018 report that I co-authored, which we had no resources for, no funding. And in fact, I self-funded it with speaking fees I charged with $20,000. We were able to assist in mobilizing the country to pass Savannah's Act and the Not Invisible Act. What if we had $200,000? What if we had $2 million? So when it comes to ensuring that we have the appropriate collection of data, which
$100,000 is nothing.
The Department of Justice, and I'm adding in the Department of Defense, where there is not only a lack of data, but a lack of data standards and interoperability where they can share data across data systems is an area that definitely needs investment and accountability. In fact, there was an evaluation of DoD data specifically related to violence in the military in 2023, and they found that DoD was not in compliance with the basic standards of OMB in regards to race and ethnicity. So that is definitely an area of investment that
this
is
is us all acting like we might be able to change
somebody
things.
Like Savannah Greywind isn't just used as a name on a piece of legislation, but the actual impacts of this crisis in urban settings are held up and given the appropriate resources that are needed, including getting law enforcement the appropriate trainings. I'm working with a family who had a family member who was killed in the city and worked with them to communicate with their tribe. They were able to get information, family communication that assisted them in the conviction of her killer. And then at the sentencing of the man who murdered her, the tribe was also given the opportunity, not just the family members, it's normally just family members and those impacted, the tribal council was able to make a statement. So providing those resources and trainings, and particularly on how to work with our tribal communities, I am a citizen of the Pawnee Nation of Oklahoma. My tribe cares what happens to me. and they deserve to know and to be a part of that. So allocation of resources, training, and accountability to ensure that urban Indians are appropriately represented and recognizing treaty and trust responsibility did not end because I stepped off our reservation.
I think that's a hugely important point. And, you know, this committee deals with this in the healthcare area. It's one of the reasons why we have Indian healthcare clinics that aren't on tribal lands. Certainly that's the way it is in Oklahoma City, for instance, and they do fantastic work. But you're exactly right. Just because you're not on a reservation doesn't mean that you lost the government gets to get out of trust and treaty responsibilities. That's extraordinarily important. If we can, Cheryl, go on to you.
On this, I guess if you ask me, where I work is with the families and with the courts, with the law enforcement. So recently, we have a man murdered. He missed the first time, so he pumped his gun and shot him again a second time. He feared for his life, according to the feds who came to our reservation. And when our family started asking him questions, they walked out on him. They left the meeting, and you know, the family has questions. We all have questions, and it doesn't hurt to answer them. But if they're not going to charge somebody for a murder, who's holding them accountable for not doing their job? If they're picking and choosing what cases, who's holding them accountable for letting people down? I'm right now advocating for our tribal courts to pick up these cases. We're only allowed to hold people in jail for 1 year. And a lot of people don't deserve to be out around the public in 1 year. So you go down to our tribal courts and they're weak. Our tribal courts are weak. My court couldn't even get a jury selection together for a jury trial. So I was picked on. I got a letter last week, 5 juries for 5 things, and I asked why. Because they only have about a pool of 60 jurors on a reservation where we know each other already. So this is a court failure. This is oversight of the court's failure, oversight of the whole tribal government's failure when our courts aren't picking up these cases for our people. Selena was murdered by 6 people, 6 adults. 1 person was charged for endangering the welfare of a child, and she wasn't even one of those 6. She was the adult she had permission to go for a ride with. And she wasn't, the lady charged wasn't even with the ones who took my niece. Not one of them 6 people were charged for anything, not even contributing to a child, alcohol to her. They kept saying she was full of alcohol and she passed out. She had no alcohol in her. Her autopsy showed nothing. So we get excuses and we get the door closed in our face. So I think, I strongly hope that somewhere somebody can put the hatchet down, put the hammer down on our tribal systems to pick up for our people, where instead of just blaming the feds. Because I worked both with the feds and the law enforcement. So I asked law enforcement, why are they not taking them? What are they telling you? And they said, they're getting us on little things in the investigation, so we're doing better. We're handing these complete investigations over now, and they're not prosecuting them. And nobody's held accountable. Nobody has to sit at the table with these families. They can walk out the door. And I don't think that's okay. So I really would like to see this funding that comes down. I also want to see some change, some strictness in our tribal government. I want our tribal governments to get stronger in our tribal courts, where we have the chance to. If it's murder, we got 1 year. If it's domestic violence, we got 1 year. Instead, they're waiting for 3 domestic violences to add up so they can turn it over to the feds. So that is my wish is, I could ask for more funding, but when we get more funding, are we going to mismanage it? I want to see more accountability from the federal government all the way down to our tribal law enforcement, everybody at the table. Because if
Well,
you're just
she
walking
does
out
need more
slamming the
money
door on
because she
families
needs
and nobody
resources to
is
help
asking you
victims
why
and their
you did that,
families.
you're going to continue to do that. So that's just, I would just like things to get stronger on the level that I am to help, you know, because that's the barriers I'm running into. Like this girl that called me, she's just a young girl in her early 20s, was held at gunpoint, and he's still free. Actually, I think he might be the one who drove a car that killed another man, if I think hard enough. So, you know, he's still free. The bottom line is he is still free in my community. And that's what I want to see go away. I want accountability, and I want people to do their jobs.
Thank you. Mary Jane?
Thank you. I like to feel comfortable with the empty chair that Mickey put. Is that a shawl? Yeah. And that's what we do in our celebrations, and it made me feel accepted. And I just pray a lot as a minister that you would want to know us more, and you would want to read our histories more. We travel to all the memorials for the Chief Joseph attempt to get into Canada, and it means so much for the younger people to understand what their forefathers have done for them, and to set up a government system with a tribal government, much like the United States. So we look at you, and we'd like you to look at us and see us as a people. I liked your remark on the women up there. I saw a picture, a portrait of women in buckskin dresses, and underneath the caption was, "They are only as beautiful as their men take care of them." And the men was hunting and fishing for them, providing for them, and they were the backbone of the family unit. When reservation life came, there's nothing but clerical jobs. So we took over the bringing home the bacon and kind of stripped the men of being the head of the family. So there's things that you need to know that we are about. And we are not a stoic people. We have Indian humor, and it goes from tribe to tribe. I can understand her humor. If she would tell me some joke, I would laugh my head off probably because it's similar. And so don't think we're stoic Indians, because we are not. We enjoy life. We enjoy life. And the beauty of our culture is beautiful. I'm looking at her ring down there. It's beautiful. And we have talent. So look at us and get inquisitive about how we live.
Thank you very much. I'm going to butcher. Is it? Pronounce that for me.
Mullion.
Mullion.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Perfect. So a lot of great things have been said, probably going last. There's not too much to add. I had a couple of sort of broad thoughts. This issue is, you know, it's not hard to hear our sharing humanity here and want to help and want to act and want to do things. This permeates a lot of other areas of tribal issues. I think when we're talking about tribal sovereignty and self-determination and natural resources and health, it's all connected. So I would encourage all members to, you know, when you are approaching sort of a tribal bill, remember this interaction and remember that everything we talked about is likely impacted by a lot of things you're seeing about tribal people. And this isn't, you know, existing in a silo. It's all interconnected. And then I'll speak quickly to sort of an extra barrier we have in Maine that Representative Pingree is quite familiar with. And I mentioned back in 1980, we had a very large case settled between the state because we had discovered that roughly 2/3 of the state was it was rightly ours, and it was taken illegally because the treaties were never ratified. So I think this is tale as old as time for a lot of tribal nations, but we have this settlement that our leaders agreed to, likely under some duress, you know, the time of living in poverty and a lot of these things we've talked about through the generations. They were promised, you know, a settlement dealing with land and money, and we did get some land back and we settled this lawsuit, but the state was very adept at their negotiating, and it's kept us oppressed and held back from our full experience as federally recognized tribal nations. So should there ever be an opportunity to look at fixing this situation in the state of Maine and restoring our access to federal Indian law that right now we can have access to it, but there's a lot of games to be played with the state that would help our people out quite a bit. So the Wabanaki Confederacy is Penobscot, Passamaquoddy, Maliseet, and Mi'kmaq, and we are heavily impacted by this restrictive settlement, and it impacts this crisis as well.
Thank you very much. A lot of other questions, but I know there's a limit on time, so I'll yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Pingree.
Great, thank you all.
I love
Really,
Shelley
just appreciate
Pingree so
your
much.
just
I knew
extremely
her when
rich
she was mayor of
testimony so much,
Portland.
and,
She's a fucking
sharing your
awesome
personal stories,
person.
but also the amazing work you've already been doing to try to work on this issue when you often didn't have the support or assistance that you need. And I was thinking of asking the same question as Chair Cole, just because I think for us trying to get down to, what can we get done at this moment in time, clearly it's a very multi-layered issue and a lot of things that we have to do. So I appreciate all the things you've already covered, from the data, the lack of law enforcement or funding for law enforcement. I think when we had our witness day, it seems to me it was something like 13% of the need that was actually being funded by the federal government. It was under 20% at any rate. So no community could operate at that level of funding. And so I think we can't discount that, the number of investigators and, just all of the things. I really appreciated the thoughts about the specific alert system. We all now see on our phones an alert, if someone wanders off who has dementia or all those things all the time, or a missing child. And I'd never really thought about how the specificity of that would also bring a lot of attention to this particular problem. And I think, as others have said, the magnitude of this problem is little understood by most people. And, as women, we have a lot of concerns about domestic violence and rape crisis and all the other things that happen to women. But to know that this is orders of magnitude worse, and these, it's historic, and it's just not changing. I think the other two questions I might ask you to just go into a little bit more as a group is sort of this jurisdictional issue, because I think that confuses many of us, and obviously there have been court cases that have made it even cloudier, and then it's different from tribe to tribe. So I think maybe if you all want to comment about that a little bit more. And also just wanted to appreciate what Chairman Cole said as well about the urban issue, because I think we often don't separate out this, and you think, oh, well, you're in an urban area, you have excellent law enforcement. It's not the same as a tribe where there's jurisdictional issues, but the fact is, if people aren't properly trained or don't understand, the stories are horrific. So I'm just going to start with Director Bryant. So thank you for sharing your own personal story. And then I'll ask all of you to go down through this, but I'd be interested in your thought about the tribal courts and the jurisdictional issues. And if you just want to take that one step further, I appreciate you pointing out that the Maine tribes, as so many different tribes have different constraints on them, but ours we feel is uniquely difficult and challenging. And how, VAWA was a great example, because we assume that's, one thing that has been really important. Just describe a little bit more either the hoops that we had to go through, or that is an example of the federal funding that doesn't naturally come to our tribes.
Violence Against Women's Act.
The way it does to others. So asking you that, and then asking all of you just any comments you have about the jurisdictional issues.
Sure, and I'm not sure if this is on. There we go, got it. So yes, it's a great example to talk about the Federal Violence Against Women Act. So, the jurisdictional issues we talk about, a big part of this is before VAWA, if you had a domestic violence situation on tribal land, of course, so keeping, in mind that inequity there in urban areas, if the perpetrator was not a tribal member, you often couldn't bring that into tribal court. And that added to this level of confusion, where a lot of courts were like, well, those are tribal people, that's probably not our thing. And then tribal courts were like, well, we don't have the jurisdiction here. So that's hard. That's traumatizing to victims, dragging them around different places and having them retell these stories and not getting justice. So the tribes in Maine, because of the Settlement Act, there's a provision in there that says if a law passes at the federal level meant to benefit federally recognized tribal nations, the state can decide at any time that they don't want us to have access to that law if it impacts their jurisdiction. So in the 2015 reauthorization of VAWA, the Penobscot Nation was ready to start handling these cases. We assumed that this law would apply to us. We actually got chosen to be part of a pilot program nationwide. And then the state stepped in and said, slow down. We think this might impact our jurisdiction. We don't want you having access to this law. And then it took 7 years of advocacy, of lobbying, of working at the state level and the federal level to be mentioned in the most recent reauthorization of VAWA. And in that time, of the domestic violence incidences at Penobscot Nation, we got 0 convictions because they were all getting kicked out to state courts and not going through the right process, and 0 justice. And those are just the crimes that are reported. And someone is charged and arrested, not even speaking about, everything that else is going on. So that's one example of the specific barrier that we're facing and looking at. There's been 150 or so federal pieces of legislation that have passed since 1980 that we've had the same issues with. Some of them we've, been able to work around and use, and a lot of them have been blocked by the state. So we're working at the state and federal level right now to fix this, and this, heavily impacts this crisis when we're talking about VAWA.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to comment, or do you want to just go down? Any thoughts you have about the complicated jurisdictional issues?
I just want to speak about VAWA, too. I went to a conference with the judge of our tribal court, and she had wanted me to go hear what the people were saying, what the Native people were saying. And most of the Indian women there, my age and older, were really hopping mad because they wanted to know how this came about, who wrote it, and had they ever been on a reservation. And they said, I don't think so. So that was really an angry time for a lot of the Native older women. And I think they're the ones that always speak out too, because it's really confusing to be stopped by a cop on the reservation. And I was stopped for speeding, and it was a tribal cop. And I knew him. I saw him grow up and everything. I said, do you have jurisdiction here? Or is this a state highway or a county highway, And he was really irritated with me because I was pushing his buttons, but that's how confusing it is. And then the case that I reported in my report, when the perpetrator was taken to jail, then they're taken to the federal court. So they're talking about, are we being tried twice, So it's Indian law on each reservation is different. And I like the remark about the urban Indians with the treaty. They still retain their treaties, because I've been in the Los Angeles area for a while as well. And I wondered that too. Don't I have sovereignty as an Nez tribal person? So we have a lot of questions that need to be studied.
Thank you.
I guess I will speak from criminal jurisdiction because that's kind of where I'm at. In Montana, we have tribal, county, state, and federal. So with my niece, Selena, she was last seen in Billings with a group, and then she left and she went into Bighorn County. So you have two people. Also, keep in mind that none of these jurisdictions want this case. Keep that in mind. With our last recent missing person who missing from our reservation, and if you don't know, there's a thing called border towns and border counties. So he goes over to the border town, and that's the last place he's seen. Okay, well then every time I went to the tribal cops and the tribal investigator, they blame the county. And I go to county, I don't get no answers. So with my niece Selena, I guess, like I said, there was one charge and it went back into Billings. I never did get any charges, not one charge on the 6 people who killed her, and that was put on Bighorn County. And I guess from then on, me and Bighorn County kind of rub elbows and whatever else you would say, because I, want to speak up. I want these jurisdictions clearly laid out, but I don't want jurisdiction used as an excuse to not do it, which I'm seeing in Montana, which I see even from my own tribal investigators and police, you know, oh, he was in town, and that's it. That was it for them. They stopped the search. Only people searching on the reservations was the family. So I guess to use it as an excuse is becoming common. So I would like these lines drawn a little clearer. And like I said, I really want my tribal court to be stronger. We need our systems to be stronger. When it comes to county, state, and federal, I have to hear, oh, we only take slam dunk cases. Oh, this judge will only take slam dunk. That's not what I want to hear, and that's not what I want to relay to a family. So I guess when it comes to jurisdictions, I watch too much TV, number one, where people want crime solved. So jurisdiction needs to be clearly stated, and I would love to see them all work together, because that's what's needed. That's how my niece was found. She wasn't found by Bighorn County. She wasn't found by Billings. She wasn't even found by the Crow tribe, because we hadn't had any proof she went to the res. But they offered their services, and by us not leaving, Bighorn County was forced to ask for Operation Lady Justice's help. So, and but this also goes back to a comment I heard earlier about not knowing about MMIP. In 2018 was my first niece. Nobody heard me. When I Googled MMIP, all I got was ribbon skirts from a newly formed task force that was just formed. So in 2020, I knew I had to be loud for Selena. I knew I had to do everything I could. I went to the social media. I went to all the news outlets, and the local station wouldn't cover us. The Billings Gazette wouldn't do a story. So about 3-4 days in, I got Wyoming News, their radio station that goes all over. A reporter from the New York Times heard it. So I had the New York Times at this rest area before I had the local newspaper. And later that day, when the local newspaper sent out their reporter, I told her, you tell your editor to copy the story from the New York Times. And if he wants a story, at this time, families were coming to me at the rest area. I pointed to a man that was missing his daughter in Billings. I said, you go over there and talk to him. Get his story out, because I got my story out. I got the New York Times. That man standing over there needs the Billings Gazette. So, you know, jurisdiction, it can be a tricky game, but I do not like it used as an excuse not to do their job.
The maze of jurisdiction has created an opportunity for predators to utilize it to ensure that they can move from reservation to reservation, community to community. We call it res hopping in the work that I do. I worked with a family. We found out this individual had moved across 5 different reservations, avoiding prosecution as a domestic violence perpetrator because of the maze of jurisdiction that was not allowing for the arrest and prosecution of a non-Indian on tribal land. And in the 5th reservation, he killed her. And so the utilization of predators who have identified this opportunity, because that's what it is. And we have to look at, why was it created? Why does this maze of jurisdiction maintain itself in a way that has not only exasperated the issue, but allowed it to continue in a way that all the statistics that we're all talking about are going to continue to grow unless we address this maze of jurisdiction on our tribal lands? Cases of individuals, for example, there was a case in Montana where the young woman was placed about 800 feet off of the reservation, and then they couldn't decide, you know, she'd been killed on the reservation, but her body was found off the reservation, so whose jurisdiction was it? And they fought about jurisdiction instead of investigating the case. And we think that this only applies on the reservations. And I must say that is a huge issue, and it must be addressed. I'm working with a family right now who had a loved one who was beaten and left for dead underneath a bus stop in a city. And 4 months later, her family contacts me and my organization and asks us to help because they had not heard anything from the police in that jurisdiction, the city police. When we reach out and we talk to them, they're like, oh, well, we didn't know who jurisdiction it was because the bus stops
are the county's jurisdiction. If she had been found 6 inches outside of that bus stop, it would have been the city. But the city is the one who discovered her body and then transported it to the hospital, where 5 days later her mother watched her die holding her hand. And it took them 4 months and a small Native nonprofit working in the tribe in another state to push them towards assigning an investigator who, by then, most of the evidence was gone and her death was ruled undetermined because there was nothing left for them to investigate. This maze of jurisdiction is an excuse. We published a report in 2018 looking at urban Native women and found that 94% of them had been sexually assaulted in their lifetime. Only 8% of those who reported it in those urban jurisdictions saw the conviction of those that assaulted them. Instead, they faced victim blaming of what was she drinking, was she a runaway, all of the things that many women face. This maze of jurisdiction is rampant and used by predators on the reservations, and then it is used as an excuse by those in the urban areas to simply not pay attention to those they don't care about, and the ones they don't care about look like me and the rest of these women sitting here today in front of you.
Thank you for asking that question in terms of jurisdiction. That was one of the issues that I spoke about in regards to what is happening here in Indian country. As I stated earlier at the very beginning, when cases begin, usually legally, it's where the crime was committed. At least that's what we're taught. I did go to law school. I was a former prosecutor for 2 years before becoming an elected official for my nation. But that's what we're taught for criminal cases, is where did the crime begin, or where was it committed? But in Indian country, I think it was said already before. It's tribal people, so it's tribal court, or it's tribal people, it becomes a tribal issue. They pass that buck around, kind of just pushing it back and forth. I'd like to see our law enforcement work together and to communicate with each other, and to communicate with victims, and to communicate with families. The jurisdictional issues have really just become an excuse to not do the job. And I really like the statement made earlier about, holding people accountable. Why are we not doing that? Because I think that that's something that I would like to see. There's I grappled with the idea of sharing this story, but I feel like it needs to be said now. When I was 17 years old, I took a Coke from a man, and I woke up in his shack, tied up. I couldn't see. I couldn't see him. I was in his shack for about maybe 7 to 9 days, tied up. He raped me repeatedly. He beat me. He broke my ribs, broke my cheekbones. He tried to carve his initials into my pubic area. I was 17 years old. I had just graduated from high school. And because I didn't know where I was being kept, where the shed was located, they could never identify the jurisdiction. And the man who I knew this man. I said his name. They never prosecuted him. I was 17 years old. And the worst part, I think, of this story is today I represent this man in my community. And this man has reached out to me on 2 occasions, asking me for help. Now, you guys are elected officials. You know that we have a responsibility to the people who have elected us. We have a responsibility to all of our people. And when we're talking about the jurisdictional issues, I think back, because I repressed that memory for over 20 years I never talked about it because I was told you don't talk about those things. I never said anything. I never, shared my story with people. But I've gone back and I've questioned, was it the jurisdictional issue? Because I remember they kept asking me, where is this shed located? I don't know where it was located. I was tied up. I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know, I just remember falling in and out of consciousness. That's all I remember. I remember the smell of mulch. I remember Red Hot Chili Peppers being played in the background, which to this day I can't stand Red Hot Chili Peppers or the smell of mulch. But I don't know why my case was never prosecuted. I don't, I wish I could say that this was why it was never, they never communicated with me. When I asked for a copy of the police report, they never did it. I was missing for over 7 days and nobody came looking for me. Nobody asked where I was at. In my community, with my family, with my parents, they trusted the police. And when the police told them that maybe I just wanted to just get up and just leave, they believed them. They believed that there was no missing person. They didn't believe, that I was taken or that anything bad was happening to me because they trusted them. And in many of our Indian communities, that's how many of our elders are. They trust the police because that's what we're taught. That's what we're told. We're told to trust the government, to trust those in leadership who are making decisions for us. So the question that you asked about jurisdiction, what I can say is that a lot of cases don't ever get to see justice because nobody wants to work the cases. Everybody wants to say it belongs to somebody else, or it's their problem, or it's just a case that just, you get to say that it's been closed. So I think, to answer your question, I wish we had law enforcement where everybody took their job seriously. I wish we had people who cared. And I wish we had people who could ask questions when we go to them and not make it sound like it's our fault or that we wanted to leave or that our case is not important. So I think that communication is really important, not only between law enforcement, but communication with the victims and communication with the families. And these jurisdictional issues with border towns, with counties, with states, with Indian country, it's always that question, who has jurisdiction? And that shouldn't be the question. The question should be, how can we help? And who did this? Let's hold them accountable. Those should be the questions that we should be asking. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for sharing that story, and so deeply personal. Thank you all really for. I mean, I'm so sorry that you all have such stories to share about yourselves or your family members, and I really appreciate you bringing that to us, and in particular your last story. Thank you for choosing to become an elected official and to help others and be a lawyer, given your experiences. And I'm just so sorry that happened to you and to happen to all of you. So I hope we can all do something today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for holding this hearing. It's evident to everybody how much you care about this. I'd like to thank our panel for being here today. Mary Jane, you mentioned something about stoicism. I'm glad you brought that up because no more will I misconstrue stoicism for self-control. And when I look at this panel here talking about this subject that has been such a problem, a crisis for your people for so long, that it requires self-control to maintain composure when talking about something that doesn't seem to be fought for. And as I look in this room, and every time we have hearings like this, the room is full of people who are in self-control but not stoicism because they feel that there is no justice for their people, specifically on this subject, but in others as well. Unseen, unheard, uncared for, and forgotten. But you're not. We all care. And I'm honored to be on this committee. I don't have any tribes
Is that
in my district,
Elsie?
but we do
Is that, I
have
think that's
20,000
Mr.
urban
Elsie. Is that what his name is?
tribal members in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I'm glad the FCC has taken a start, but it's time to do better. And what I would like to see is my family's not coming to the inauguration on January 20 because I don't know what's going to happen. And the reason I told them I don't want to come to inauguration is I don't know what's going to happen, and I'm going to be in warrior mode. So 20 years in the Navy, my colleague here,
What just happened?
20
What?
years
Where?
in the Navy.
What?
I
Hi,
know I'll
Tom.
be in warrior mode that day, more interested in protecting my family than watching an inauguration. So I said, I can't be a good daddy, husband, and host if I'm in warrior mode. And what we need now is across all tribal lands. And Mary Jane, when you mentioned that the reservation system has taken the provider mission of your men away from you, this should be their mission. This should be our mission, and their mission is warrior mode to protect your
What?
people. And
So
we
this
need
is
to
about
get rid of the
testosterone?
cross-jurisdictional problems. If we only have 218 on 227,000, they need to be volunteering and getting in warrior mode so that you have 600, 700, 800 to where people can't come onto the res where evil goes, where there is no prevention of crime.
Dude,
Evil
just
will
say
go and
thank
predators
you
will survive,
and shut up.
and evil must be fought. So I want to see men of all types standing up and volunteering to be warriors for your people. And until we can get the notification system
Volunteering?
fixed, that's job
What,
one. Let's get this
vigilantes? What are you
notification
talking about?
system fixed, along with tracking capabilities.
Oh, okay.
Along with air support.
Let's put
27,000
air tags on
miles.
everybody.
We need to have air support for you so that we can track down people who are missing. We got people in the air, so we can be.
Do they
looking
not
for
have
these
access?
folks. Training for law enforcement,
Never mind.
tribal lands wide.
Yeah, that's right. Warrior mode.
Hiring those cops and volunteers.
Oh, don't
and then
forget the
fixing
volunteers.
cross-deputization. And
Cross
so
deputization.
we need guys to get in warrior mode everywhere.
I'm so sorry.
The attention.
I know. It's a very
this
serious
committee,
topic.
Subcommittee and
This is not a
Lame Duck
serious
section,
man.
Where there's really not a whole lot going on. I want to work with my fellow warriors on this committee to make sure that this problem comes to an end. And I've asked
Shelley
my staff
Pingree's
to
probably
put
like,
20
I'm
of the
gonna
most recent
fucking
missing
kill
women
that dude.
and children on a poster, which we'll make available to whomever wants it. If you don't know about these problems,
what?
And it's not in the media, it's not on the national news, it's not anywhere.
We're gonna
You
make
don't
a
know it exists,
poster?
but we do now. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you. Justice should be served soon. And
boom.
I look forward to working with my fellow warriors,
Yeah.
men and women, on this
And
committee
women.
to help.
Wait, what?
Thank
What
you.
did he just say? What I think he said?
Thank you.
Did he say what?
Ms. McCollum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'd like to thank you and Ranking Member Pingree for doing this. Mr. Cole, Chairman Cole has left. We both serve on the Defense Committee. And Ms. Hawk, I have not been happy, Ms. Echo Hawk, excuse me, your whole name deserves to be said. I am not happy with the way the Department of Defense has been handling sexual assault cases. And so you've just given more fuel to my fire. So thank you for pointing that out. And I know Chairman Cole, who's on the committee with me, heard you loud and clear, as well as Chairman Calvert, who's the chair right now, was also member of this committee where we worked nonpartisanly on tribal affairs.
Why do these people
I wanna
all of
take
a sudden are
second,
learning about missing and murdered
lead up
Indigenous
paint a
women?
question,
And
to all
there's
of
been
you,
a lot
but
of
to you in particular.
and should rightly so some emphasis on military
been, working
sexual
very
assault.
to
Why
lead
don't
on
these
efforts
folks
on
know?
This is a crisis that I've been aware of since the 70s, since I was a child. People did talk about it quietly.
Warriors
between,
and women.
the tribal nations in Wisconsin and Minnesota. And I was very fortunate to have tribal friends, as well as my grandmother trading, as she liked to put it, with tribal women and hearing their stories. Our Lieutenant Governor, Peggy Flanagan, a member of the White Earth Band, has been an advocate in 2019, along with Senator Mary Kunish, who's in my constituency, the first Indigenous woman elected to the Minnesota Senate. They chair the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women Task Force, which delivered a report to the state legislature highlighting some of the same heartbreaking, infuriating
I really love the
statistics
warriors
that our
and
witnesses
women.
shared today. And I won't break down Minnesota's.
Oh, warriors, men and women. Okay, sorry.
Numbers. One is too many.
Damn it.
Period.
He wasn't as toxic as
The
I thought he
report
was.
resulted in the development of a permanent office in the state for missing and murdered Indigenous relatives.
Yeah, I don't feel very
But even with the
included. Let's
focus
put
of
it
the
that way.
crisis in Minnesota, and by the way, Minnesota's paying for this. We're not getting money from the federal government to do this. This is our legacy. This is our wrong, and this is something we're working together as one Minnesota with Governor Walz in leadership. We're looking for permanent solutions, and that's the same thing that the chairman and the ranking member are asking from all of us again today. But jurisdiction comes up over and over and over again. And here is one of our challenges with jurisdiction.
And
for
a volunteer.
What you have touched upon in your report, thank you, the report from Navajo Nation. Your funding is spread across all over. So we have some funding that we can put into what we do for tribal nations, primarily healthcare and education, but some other things in here too. But you also have funding in the committee that oversees the Justice Department. You have funding in housing. We need more funding for families in crisis, whether it's domestic violence or just housing.
Yeah,
in
probably
general,
not.
To
Or
reduce
probably not.
some of the stress that tribal nations and their communities are facing. Even transportation. We've heard over and over again about how many miles of bad roads we have. Some of that's in our jurisdiction, but some of it's in the Department of Transportation system. So one of the things that I've been working on since I got to Congress,
So
and
aren't
we've been
you
making
supposed to
improvements,
help
but
fix
I think
that?
you could help us make improvements even faster with your voices. We need a whole of Indian country document for your budget. So a tribal nation knows this portion's from here, this portion's from here, that's portions from there. So we can knit it together, including just broadband and better communications, which is in, believe it or not, the Ag Bill, which the two of us have worked on a little bit. So how do you stitch anything whole of government when your funding is spread out all over? I think we can be of help to paint a better picture with that, but we need you also to put the pressure that's been put on the Bush administration, the Obama administration, the Trump administration.
Can you guys just keep saying things?
Again. We make headwinds with
Can you guys
OMB,
just keep?
but we're not
keep,
where we need.
You need to
be
keep
for you
speaking
yet.
loudly.
It would be so helpful for us as well.
Yeah, it'll be very helpful for us if you would just continue
And
to
then there's
scream
the
at the
other
top of your
jurisdiction.
lungs.
I'm
Thank
a border
you.
state.
I'm sorry.
North Dakota, South Dakota, tribally enrolled members going back and forth. Urban, St. Paul,
Exact, Orin. That is so
Duluth.
well said.
We know that there's problems. We're working on it. But there's also problems with jurisdiction with the Coast Guard, with women who are trafficked and abused out of Lake Superior. And I know the same thing's happening out of Lake Michigan as well, too. So we need to, open up this jurisdiction and think big when we're talking about it, including the Coast Guard, and then working with with Canada, the provinces, and the First Nations. Someone goes back and forth between International Falls into Canada, Fort France. They're traveling all the time. We cannot let jurisdiction be a barrier. So I thank you for you pointing this out. But I want to take this down a slightly different track, because I want to get this right when we do this. So I'm going to take a second and just read a little history. I'm a social studies teacher. Our territorial governor, Ramsey, he served as the mayor of St. Paul. He did a lot of really nasty things. He even served up here in the House. But when he came to Minnesota, he was in his position of governor and superintendent of affairs in 1891. He played a key role in obtaining Dakota leaders. It was I live on the land of the Dakota people, and he did a lot of things. But he also led to a conflict in 1862. A group of Dakota, hungry, with what they were entitled to locked up, not being put out by Governor Ramsey, led to what we call the Sioux Uprising, and the Sioux were right to uprise. Minnesota has the largest history of hanging Native Americans after that uprising. But one of the things that came out of all of that was the term redskin and bounties placed on redskins. So I have worked with tribal leaders and allies for a long time about eliminating the term red. So when I heard you refer to Code Red, I thought, I wonder what my tribes would think about that. So I'm not asking for a big discussion on that right now, but that's the connotation it even has for me as a non-Native American, to use that and to hear that term in Minnesota. So we need to do something to kind of separate things out, but I would hope that members of Congress would reflect on your choices and your wishes for what we call that. And it needs to be universal, so that when you go from state to state, in my 5-state area, Wisconsin, North Dakota, South Dakota, even into Canada, that people know what that means when that goes on. And we do need that, because it will not only, I believe, hopefully save lives, but it will also bring constant attention to what is happening. To my sisters who testified today, my sisters in the audience, my sisters here, and our great allies, thank you for today. This is personal for me for some of the reasons some of you shared, but it's also personal for me because I have a very close family member who has worked and chosen, we laugh about her taking a vow of poverty, to work with domestic violence victims. To your point, you need to take care of yourself, because I stress this person needs to take care of herself. She was so frustrated with jurisdictional and things happening, she decided to move into the court system and work with families. You're not alone, but there's so much work to be done. Miigwech.
Thank you so much for those comments, and especially in the naming convention, which is one of the recommendations that we've made to the FCC, is that anytime you are making an effort in Indian country, appropriate tribal consultation is needed, which is why the red alert, which is making reference to the red hand over individuals' faces, is appropriate in the state of Washington. The feather alert was appropriate in the state of California, but what does that look like at the national level? And the only way we will be able to determine that is through tribal consultation that has begun, but needs to be again, continued out, because an alert system like this has the ability to do what we haven't been able to do, and that is touch both the reservations, the urban areas, the rural areas, and offer an opportunity to ensure that our loved ones have visibility when they go missing. And the naming convention is very important and must be done in tribal consultation to meet all of the needs exactly that you just stated. So thank you.
And Mr. Chair, I will have to excuse myself for a defense meeting shortly, but I have staff here, and I'm going to watch you on, the YouTube channel. So, thank you.
Could I say just something really quickly in terms of what you asked for? I guess like all of the weaving of funds that we do receive. What I can tell you is that I've been keeping close watch on the Department of Interior's funding when it comes to public safety and justice. We know that in the last budget year, the U.S. Department of Interior received $14.8 billion, $2.46 billion went to the Bureau of Indian Affairs, which is where our public safety and justice within Indian country falls under that particular line item. There are 164 self-determination tribes and 33 locations where Office of Justice Services is located. That $555.56 million gets divided into criminal investigations and police services, detention and corrections, inspection, internal affairs, law enforcement, Indian Police Academy, tribal justice support, law enforcement program management, facility operations and maintenance, and then to tribal courts. What we can do is what we have been advocating for is to look at the secretarial amount that is actually within the law. It's the base funding that's determined for public safety and justice within Indian country. And it's something that we have been advocating for. And if Chairman Cole was still here, he'd probably be shaking his head because we've had many conversations with him to ask how do we change that secretarial amount, which will allow us to change the amount that we receive in Indian country for public safety and justice. That is just for the Department of Interior, the Bureau of Indian Affairs. That's not including Indian Health Services. That's not including the U.S. Department of Justice. That's not including any other agencies out there. I keep close watch on this because as chairwoman for Law and Order Committee, our funding comes out of the BIA funding. And there's concern right now with the new administration coming in and the proposal to get rid of a lot of the Bureau of Indian Affairs, or I guess across the board, a lot of employees within different agencies. If the Bureau of Indian Affairs, if Department of Interior, Bureau of Indian Affairs were to receive less money, that would be less money for public safety and justice across Indian country. So I ask all of you here to speak up for the Department of Interior, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, the Office of Justice Services, and ask that those funds stay where they're at or that it increase. So that
You mean the one Pat Sajak is going to be in charge of, that Department of the Interior?
Wow,
or Kevin Sorbo?
First of all, thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate you bringing
This is
hearing
so frustrating.
to the forefront and helping us all better understand the issue. Like you, a year ago, I had no idea.
Okay, it's not Lucy DeBaca. I wondered because Lou's a little bigger,
it was an
but
issue,
boy, they
really,
look
to the
alike.
degree that I now understand. It's just out of my circles, not recognized within the folks that I interact with. So, thank you for bringing it to the forefront. To all of you, thank you very much for taking the time to be here and for being brave and sharing your stories. I know that is very difficult. I could hear the difficulty in the tone and all of your voices at some point, and I believe that all the tribal nations are extremely fortunate that they have folks like you willing to advocate on the behalf of Indian tribes everywhere. The issue of jurisdictions come up a number of times. I'm kind of a simple thinker, and I've been scratching my head through this, wondering why that's such a complicated topic. I've got a couple of ideas I'll be sharing with my staff to see how we can resolve that very easily. Another thing that might not be as simple, you, and I can't read your name tag.
Sometimes I'm convinced that people don't even
Eugenia
prepare.
Leaned over to me and was sharing some data in this put together document during some of the testimony and pointing out the number of cases that have not been prosecuted. I'd just be curious on a couple things from any of you that might have a perspective. What are some of the reasons that you're aware that cases might not be prosecuted, and who would be responsible for that? I know in the state of North Carolina we have elected prosecutors.
Is it Joe
that
Biden?
we would hold accountable if they were not to.
I think we can really cut through the red tape here pretty easily. I'll have my
in
staff
all
work it out for you.
Nations, is it different from nation to nation? What efforts are being made locally inside of your tribal nations to spotlight those folks that refuse for whatever reason to prosecute?
I think that's what they've been telling you.
The folks that are,
but you know,
committing these crimes. It's a lot to unpack there, but any perspective that you've got to help us understand would be useful.
Thank you so much for asking that question, Congressman Edwards. I really appreciate it. And North Carolina, actually, you do have some tribes within North Carolina that are state recognized. So I think that you probably do have many American Indians that you do represent. You just don't know it, but you will. So within the booklet,
They're right back there in the corner. I know where they're.
Chairman, on page 23, Navajo did put together our data and statistics. And again, I'm very much about numbers. I like to see numbers, and I like to be able to take a look
Welcome
at those
back,
numbers
Tom.
and cross them out or lower those numbers. That's one of my duties as a
Butterflies,
as an
I can't.
elected official.
I'm
But I can
really
say for
glad
Navajo,
I
from
came back to this. I
2016
thought
to
initially it was a
2024, we had
MAGA missing
525
children
cases
kind of
that were
thing.
declined for federal
I'm very glad I
prosecution.
took a second
And in
look.
terms of understanding the jurisdictional issues within Indian country, their crimes are committed on reservations, on federally recognized tribal nations. Those get prosecuted at the federal level unless they're a public law 280 state. Then the state does have jurisdiction in those cases to prosecute. But many times, many of our cases go unprosecuted, as is the case here with the Navajo Nation. To answer your question, there within the booklet, you'll see that 172 cases were declined, and those cases dealt with child sexual assault or abuse. 116 was assault, which also included aggravated assault, and with resulting in serious bodily injury with a deadly or dangerous weapon. And the reasons for declination.
I really had no idea. I didn't realize the depth
States
of that issue.
Office,
But
there were 182 cases. Sorry, my glasses are getting a little bit dirty here. 182 of those cases were declined for insufficient evidence or lack of evidence. And in that time, the U.S. Attorney's Office failed in many cases to inform our law enforcement of the lack of evidence. 205 of those cases, they were declined for insufficiently confidence in likelihood of convictions. What we're seeing within Indian country in the U.S. Attorney's Office is that Indian country is turning into a stepping stone. So many attorneys do go to the U.S. Department of Justice. They do start off there in Indian country. They like to see their likelihood of convictions, the numbers at a higher rate so that they can get a better job somewhere else. And so many of our cases get pleaded out without any communication with families. So that is within the booklet that we did provide, and this is just for Navajo Nation. Every tribe does get letters for cases that are not prosecuted, and we've, again, just barely started collecting this information, and right now it's being collected in a booklet because we don't have the infrastructure in place. But all of that information is within the booklet, and that's how I can answer.
data is not well funded.
Congressman Edwards, for asking that question.
In the urban communities, we've seen no accountability at all. We are simply a population that people don't know exists in their cities, that they don't realize that the declining of prosecution and the victim blaming that happens that allows for excuses. So, for example, the story I told, the woman who was beaten, left under a bus stop and died 5 days later, there would have been no accountability for even starting an investigation unless her tribe hadn't reached out to a friend of a friend who knew me. This cannot depend on one person. This cannot depend on one organization. It must be a systematic approach that upholds accountability. The one report we have that I said again, that of those that reported their assaults, only 8% of them saw a conviction. And there's no accountability as to why. Why is there not resources dedicated?
Abigail
Why
Echo
isn't this paid attention
Hawk.
to? But we do know the stereotypes that have existed in this country.
Abigail
going
Echo
from,
Hawk.
you know, Pocahontas, who was a trafficked woman who died in captivity, is what this country thinks about Native people, that has helped build up these stereotypes. And then in instances where our people are suffering as a result of the trauma they've experienced, and they treat their wounds through alcohol, through opiates, through behaviors that may have them living on the streets, that additional stigma attaches to them. And we see absolutely no accountability for it. It is something that we have been calling for, and no one has been willing to take up the cause to say all law enforcement, regardless of where they reside, are responsible for the public safety of everybody in their communities, and that absolutely includes the first people of this land, American Indian, Alaska Natives, and the indigenous people of this land and territories.
I guess I've named 15 people. Selena got a misdemeanor charge against her perpetrators, and Kay Sarah is still, her family's still fighting. She went missing before Selena, and so when Selena went missing, they told me Selena's number 28 in Bighorn County that is missing. 28. You know, I said, I don't believe that. I think there's more. There's more mothers sitting at their table waiting for the sheriff to come up and update them. Out of those 15 I named, they come from different jurisdictions, state, tribal, federal.
Oren, thank you.
Kay Sarah's family was recently returned her jawbone. Bighorn County returned a jawbone to her when they illegally cremated her. Where'd that jawbone sit for all these years? Whose desk? Whose drawer? Who had a jawbone that it pops up all these years later, and this family has to go through it again? You get a jawbone back. What is that going to do to you? That's going to tear you up. So they had to go through it all again because somebody found her jawbone. I cannot fathom that at all. So out of those 15 people, you got one misdemeanor, endangering the welfare of a child. And you got, Selena's got 6. Kay Sarah's got 1. Kaimani's got a group. Casey is unknown. Freeman was his wife. Taz was a group. Thomasine was her boyfriend. Preston was a cop. Claiborne was a cop. All of these people are known in our communities, and nobody has been held accountable. So it goes back to trauma. We're going to go re-trauma everybody. We're traumaing our children right now because our court systems are traumaing their parents, their grandparents. It's a trickle effect. When they tell us what not to do, you know, my granddaughters, we don't even let them go in the store alone. My niece, or my daughter in California, she messages me, I'm scared. In California, I can't help her. I'm in Montana, and I empower her. That's all I can do is empower her. Tell them, you have this. You have the strength in you. You know, you're important. You're needed. You matter. So just jurisdiction, again, is an excuse, and it's hard to explain that to a family.
I had never thought of that as being an excuse. Thank you. And I just want to go back to VAWA when I first was introduced to VAWA. The judge that I traveled with,
Violence Against Women's Act,
like the other old ladies were asking too, and the question I had asked was, well, what happened to this case where they took a young girl from she was legal to get into the only bar we have on the reservation. A couple of white men came and took her in a van, took her off the reservation, kept her for a week, and raped her repeatedly, bullied her, and now she's in a state that is pitiful. What happened? They went to the state penitentiary. Why? Because it was off the reservation. So these jurisdictions bother me when they're used for, they should be in a federal prison. So I feel that we need to look at the laws on the reservation and work with the tribal people. It's going to be a long haul, but I just sometimes think I don't even know. Like I told a story about the little tribal police chasing me. You know, I don't even know who has jurisdiction. I'm 84 years old and I should know, but I don't. So that's a biggie.
All
that
over.
Needs to be worked on.
So I think a lot of good, reasonable people would look at this and think there's a baseline for justice. There's a baseline that people are human beings and deserve full treatment under the law, no matter who they are or where they come from. And that's not our reality. I think Abigail did a beautiful job talking about these specific examples of where this traumatic history has led some of our people. They fall through the cracks and nobody cares enough to pick them back up in any sense, you know, besides our communities, especially in the justice system. And I think back to a few weeks ago when President Biden apologized to our tribal nations for the United States boarding school policy. That's not ancient history. I'm 40 years old, and that's a generation or two above me. This isn't a long, long time ago. It was policy for the United States government to come into our communities, take children as young as 2 or 3, take them away to these schools, away from their families, abuse them for speaking their language or, you know, honoring their culture. It's horrific what we've been through. So as we sort through that, and we're also losing people in these ghastly crimes, that's a lot for us to shoulder, as you've heard today. You know, we're sharing this with each other today as much as we're sharing it with you. We're spreading our burden out right now, and it's a beautiful thing. But when we think about these things are terrible, how can this be going on? It begs the question to look deeper into why these crimes happen in the first place and why nobody knows about it. And it's so much more than laws and jurisdiction. It's where we've been sort of placed in society, in our Indigenous homelands, in the country that we're serving to protect even before we had the right to vote. We love this place and we need it to love us back.
Wow. Beautifully said.
Thank you all. This is kind of unusual in that we generally don't have hearings in November during the lame duck, as you said, but this is obviously a vitally important issue to all of us. We want to work with you to make sure that we can address it. And it brings up many questions, and you know, only some of them are funding. I keep hearing the jurisdictional issue. I will tell you that first time I was chairman of this committee, I decided that I bought a book, and it was The Rights of Tribes and Indians. And it's about this thick, and you go through and it talks about the different things, and I understood how PL 280 tribes came about and all this kind of stuff. And then you get to the chapter on law enforcement. I've probably read it 7 or 8 times and still don't know what the hell it says. And then you realize that every tribe is different. It's like having the same issues in Boise, Idaho, as you have in Shelley, Idaho. Those two communities are substantially different. One's 250,000, one's 1,000. You know, so their needs are different, and that's the same with tribes. But there ought to be a basic way to figure. We shouldn't have to figure out whose jurisdiction this is if someone is missing or whatever. You know, and you brought up an interesting question or an interesting thought, Abigail. When I'm sitting here listening to this, and I'm going, just because we put more money into tribal justice, that doesn't mean it's going to help tribal members.
Okay, but money's good, okay? Money helps hire people.
And their tribal systems, most likely. So we need to re-examine this, and as Ms. McCollum said, we need a whole of Indian country. And that's more than what this committee can do. What we can do is focus attention on it, and when we do our appropriation bills, concentrate on it and work with the authorizing committees to see how we need to address this to fix this. Because this is, as I said in my opening statement, this is just unacceptable. And we have a responsibility, forget the tribal or the treaty responsibility. We have a moral responsibility as human beings. So we're going to keep working on this, but I sincerely want to thank all of you for coming and sharing your stories with us today. As Tom said, there's personal stories make things real. But I want to get to the agency people and talk to them about what's going on and what thoughts they might have of how we might improve this system. But thank you all.
Could I just say one thing? I just want to clarify when it comes to serving the urban population, we want to ensure that we never touch any tribal carve-out dollars that have been put aside to ensure the public health and safety of our communities. It needs to be more.
Yeah.
But we can't forget those of us who live in the urban areas
Well
and that we are
said.
tribal people regardless of where we live.
Well
so
said.
increase those tribal dollars and also be sure that you're considering the urban populations. Thank you.
Chairman Simpson, can I also say that crime and the failure to prosecute cases does not stop during lame duck, so the work should not stop just because we are in lame duck.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Fuck yeah. I love these women.
The government relocation program. That's how my family got to Los Angeles. So it was the government that sent us there.
Yeah. Okay, thank you all.
Oh, wow. That was very emotional, but I think very important hearing, and I'm really glad that we listened to that. Thank you for indulging. And I'm really glad I took a second look at what that was. I'm really grateful for that. Wow. We have so much to learn in this country about, what is very eye-opening. And, I knew that there was a particular problem in reporting women of color, Indigenous women, and crimes against them. I knew that was, I am aware that that is an issue. And yet I don't feel like I know. I certainly didn't understand all the jurisdictional issues and the fact that there would be such a hot potato game played with people's lives and with justice, and we need to hear it. We need to hear it, and we need to stand alongside and amplify. And so much could be done in this country to help create more perfect union. God, I just don't feel like it is that hard if we all row in the same direction and help kids feel empowered and valued, have elders feel empowered and valued. I mean, just imagine what we could accomplish if you took away the basic concerns or at least mitigated them of, life and limb and health and housing and other things. Just imagine what could be done. What could be done. And we owe such a debt. I believe in I looked up the land that Los Angeles and the area that I live in particular. It's Chumash land and Tongva, and we're guests on stolen lands. And I know that can sound a little cheesy or something, and I don't mean it to, and I don't know how to fix the things that white people have done to indigenous populations, to blacks in America, all of the things. I believe in reparations. I believe that I don't care if problems are tough. That's what we're supposed to. Oh, Chumash, Lucena, and Gabrielino. Cool. So I believe tough problems like reparations and uplifting communities that far deserve more than we've given, that we've shared. Oh my God, we could row so much better if we took away disinformation and misinformation. I know. But I believe that those are problems. Yes, a percentage of our taxes should go to tribes. Like, I think there are ways to address those issues. And I understand that, butterflies. And I'm not trying to ignore the fact that the incoming administration has plans to really whitewash our history and shove Christ up your butt, which is not going to be easy. But that just means we have to I don't know, we just have to keep watching. We have to keep talking about it. We have to push for everyone. For everyone. It's such a shame what we do in this country to ourselves, really. We lose out on so much. We lose out on so much. Well, what a morning. A lot. Thank you so much for spending your morning with me. And I look forward to seeing you. Today's Wednesday. I should definitely see you tomorrow morning. I always try to go, like, maybe I'll go live in the afternoon. So I am trying, like gaming or something, a little different. But I haven't been able to be successful. It's either napping or I'm doing a chore. You know what I mean? It's like if I'm not depressed sleeping, I'm doing some chore that I would rather not be doing. But yes, thank you. Thank you so much, butterflies. And thank you all really for coming. I really appreciate it. I hope you have a great Wednesday. Yes, no, I don't have a problem with Christ either. It's the terrible Christians I can't deal with. I agree. It's the organization of that religion that really gets under my craw. And the weaponization of it. Bye, Badger. Busy day, busy day. All right. I'll send you on your way. Have a good one. I hope it goes well for you. And I will see you at the same place tomorrow morning. All right. Great. Sounds like a plan, Stan.